that's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune when I'm back on top in June. I said that's life.
We never have any prep. Obviously, people already know who's on because of the thumbnail. But I was thinking about this, doing a little bit more research into your background. It's so funny because we always often ask people who are in the audio world, you know, our regular type of guest, how you got into the industry. And I feel like you and I had very similar paths, but they went in the opposite direction. So if I know correctly, you started out in home theater at Tweeter?
Yeah. I was at Villanova getting my engineering degree, and I flunked the course, and so I had to stay for the summer in Philly, and so I got a job at the King of Prussia Tweeter. It was Bryn Mawr Stereo at the time, and then they changed the name to Tweeter, and Tweeter had owned it, but they hadn't changed the name, and so I started selling car stereo on the main line. It was so cool. It's like the coolest thing ever.
What year is this?
So that was 1999.
So guess what my first job was?
You were a car stereo installer at a Tweeter?
I was a car detailer. And we went in the complete opposite path.
Funny.
I love it.
Funny.
It's funny how this industry, I got into detailing because it was the first cool job I could have doing cars, where at the time I was too young to, I think, do anything professionally with a physical store. At that point in time, people didn't really hire. I was probably 15 when I started. I don't even know how I got around.
Yeah.
But I was a mobile detailer, and it was a cool job because I got to meet super enthusiasts. But then there's also some really shady situations in which I did not want to be a car detailer anymore.
Yeah, well, just to clarify for the audience, I don't detail anybody else's car.
Right.
So I've gotten into the curation of products, and I only take care of my own cars. And then, of course, YouTube became a thing. We can tell the whole story if you like.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, so really cool. So you started out, you're at Tweeter. What made you get into the world of Tweeter?
So, as most, like maybe not most, but as some young men, I loved cars. I loved subs. I loved bass. I was a big Wu-Tang fan. And so I was listening to like Junior Mafia and Notorious B.I.G. And so I was, was a white kid in an only white town. And we loved rap. Like that was the renaissance of the early 90s in like 93, 94. So I was a skateboarder and I loved rap. And so naturally I wanted everybody else to hear it in the neighborhood. And so I'd chop the back seats out and I would get J&R Music World, I would get Crutchfield, I would get, all the catalogs, and I would just dream of, man, if I could just get this or that. And then I think it was Northeast Power and Light was my local stereo shop. And you'd go in there as a 16 or 17-year-old and kind of dream about buying some Eclipse stuff or some Alpine F1 back in the day, stuff like that. And so it was a natural thing when I went to Villanova. I didn't have a job for the first 2 years, so I would come back in between semesters and just work odd jobs. Work at like the post office. I was a casual carrier one summer. I also worked for an electrical contractor where I'd like sort the dumpster so you could fit more junk in it, stuff like that. $5, $8, $9 an hour jobs. And my sophomore year of college, I flunked fundamentals of electrical engineering 1, and I'm a poor kid from northeastern PA. It wasn't an option to take like an extra semester, extra year at Villanova, so I had to stay the summer to get back on track. Because then, as an engineer, you don't have extra credit. You don't have extra credit hours available. Like you're stacked from start to finish all the way through your time at school. And so I stayed and I applied to Bally Total Fitness, Tower Records, which still existed then. It's making me sound I'm like a real adult now. And then Bryn Mawr Stereo. I had a nice resume. It said, electrical engineering student at Villanova, and then all my background of being a janitor and all this stuff. And I got a job as a floor trainer. Basically means you wipe down the machines at Bally Total Fitness. I took the job there. And then the guy at Bryn Mawr Stereo called me. The manager said, "Hey, before you go into work, come in. We want to talk to you." I was like, "Nah, I already committed." He's like, "No, I'm telling you, come. We want to talk to you." So I went in and they handed me the catalog, like the tweeter catalog, and said, "What do you know about the car stereo stuff?" So my background of wanting to buy all this crap, hanging around the stereo shop, chopping my backseat out, doing some janky stuff, I knew model numbers, I knew, metric hit numbers, I knew everything. I just started rattling off. I probably knew more than the guy that was interviewing me, and so they said, "Look, we don't need a full-time car stereo salesman. We need someone to take care of the stock room, and then just do some part-time car stereo sales. So we'll pay you, I think it was $8 an hour to work in the stock room, and then you'll do car stereo part-time, and you get commission." But I had no concept what commission meant. I didn't know what that meant. My first job was $4.25 an hour. I was a cart pusher for Walmart for $5.15 an hour. That was a big deal. So this is when minimum wage was $4.25. The only raises I'd gotten was when minimum wage went up. And I made $9 an hour as a casual carrier. So I'm like, sweet, $8 an hour, and I get to touch TVs and Alpine and Eclipse head units and Boston acoustic speakers and all this stuff. I was like, this is sweet. I'm in. I called Bally, said, "Look, I'm sorry, but I got like this dream job." And the first day they put me on the floor, and I just never understood. We can talk about the laziness of most salespeople, but I was studying, preparing. I didn't study in engineering school, clearly. I flunked the course, but I was studying this because I freaking love this stuff more than I could explain. I wanted to buy it all. And so I went into there was a high-end room and a low-end room. So I was in the high-end room just memorizing. I wanted to memorize all the different head unit specs on like hour one, day one. Guy walks in the store. He has a Jeep Grand Cherokee. So it's a 99 Jeep Grand Cherokee, brand new. And he said, "I got this car. What would you get?" So I told him. It was like, I'll never forget, it was like Boston 6.5 Pros, an extant amp that rarely worked, but man, when they did, they sounded great. It was,
they were shiny.
Oh yeah, because you'd get dust in it and it would explode, right? And so it was like $4,500, right? At JLW3s and a custom box and the whole thing. I just told him what I would want to buy, and I just kind of started walking away. He's like, "All right, I'll take it." I was like, "All right, cool." So I went out to the guy, who was the manager of the car stereo thing. I said, "Hey," here, and I rattled off, "Here's what he needs." And I grabbed the metric kit, and I knew all this crap like day one, hour one, because I loved it. I lived it, loved it. And what I didn't know is that you made 16% of the profit. And of course, car stereo at the time had, roughly 45 to 50% margin. So take $4,500, that's $2,250. I make 16% of that. So what is that? $300-something. You want to talk about a freaking awakening,
right?
Like awakening a dragon. Like I had no idea that was possible. Like I just made like $400 in 10 seconds sharing what I love, and there's no cap. So the manager comes up to me, like the store manager says, "What's going on here?" And I said, "I don't know. I told this guy what I wanted to buy, and he bought it." And so the other guy's all ticked off because he's typing in the ticket, because I didn't even have a login code yet, or a rep number. And he says, "All right, we're going to get somebody else to do the stock room. You're going to sell." And so by the end of that year, I was like number 3 in the tri-state area of car stereo sales or something like that. And I'm making 50, 60 grand selling stuff. So went from, I don't think I made any more than $5,000 in a year in my life, working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, part-time, double part-time jobs, to this awakening of just pure bliss. And so that's how I got into this car stereo world of chasing what I loved. And then I was introduced to the idea of you could take your passion and make a living at it. I was like, man, I don't ever want to do anything but this kind of life.
Yeah, I think Tweeter was the first place that I worked at where I realized that I could make a career out of car audio. My first job was actually Circuit City in Orlando, Florida, Alafaya Trail when they opened. I was there opening the store, and I worked there for about 2 years while I was at UTI in Orlando, Florida. But after that, I moved back to Maryland, which is where I grew up, and worked for Tweeter in Owings Mills, Maryland. And that was the first place. It was a pretty affluent place. It was a good store. And it was the first place you would see people who actually had money coming into buy car stereo, right? So I got to do a little bit more than, stuff at Circuit City in Orlando, where it was just all over the place what I was doing there. But you could, one, make decent money. Two, I was selling high-end product on almost everything that I did. I became my own salesman. That's kind of like where I learned sales and learned how to talk to clients. And that's kind of where that passion of mine came into place, because much like you, that client is always going to find you, right? You can do really high-end stuff, and that client is always going to find you, right? Based on your passion and your knowledge, and people crave that, and that you've made a business. You've made an empire out of that. That whole business model of people not wanting to do the research in a sense where they're getting in the minutia of everything and they don't know what to pick, this versus that, and they would just want somebody educated to tell them what to buy. Much like you said, your first client, where it's like, what would you do, right? And you're just like, this is exactly what I would do. If you know what you're talking about, if you're passionate, people are going to trust you. And then obviously you got to perform and have the results to back that up. And then that's what accelerates it to the next level. But kind of like you were alluding to, that's kind of same ordeal that I saw at Tweeter, where I knew this is something that could be a profession.
It was such a genius model, and that it was always so fascinating to me that the people that generally worked there were just freaking idiots, man.
Yeah, it had 40-year-old virgin vibes. That store they worked at 40-year-old virgin? It was like the same store, right? There were some really smart people, but then there's just some really just stoner burnouts.
Well, there was always a guy like you or me. There was a guy like you or me that were punching above our belt, that were some young guy that was way smarter than everybody else. I'm not tooting my own horn. Like these people just aren't smart. And so here I am, Villanova engineering student, top 10 university type thing. And so I was the dumbest kid at Villanova, but now in this world, I'm the smartest guy. And so I went to Tweeter's training, which changed my life. I mean, they taught us feature advantage benefit, cool. Right? Top-down selling. So you would start at the top product and work your way down, and you would sort of, and you'd put on a show, you'd teach people what the options were. And chances are they were going to buy something that was, say, 2 steps from base, and they end up buying something 3 steps from top. And it just made sense, because you would sort of show them the value. You'd talk about the features, what advantage did it have, and what benefit did it have to them. So it's the old Xerox training platform. So it was immeasurably value in my life, because when I got there, I was an engineer, right? I was a typical introvert engineer. I wanted to be this stoic guy working on circuit boards and stuff, or computers or whatever. And I had no idea that I was sort of destined to be this selective extroverted salesman, this salesperson, but a type C salesman, not a type A salesman. There's many different types of people that can be successful at selling stuff, but I'd always hated the whole, usually the best sales guys didn't know anything about the stuff, right? They would just dupe people into buying whatever paid them the biggest spiff. And same thing in every, when I went into finance, same thing. The best guys, the guys that made the most money, were always the shadiest, right? They were always the ones that were the slickest, but they had the relationship thing down. I didn't have the relationship. I didn't want the relationship. I just wanted to tell you what I'd learned that day. And that has real power in the world. It has real power to a certain niche of people that just so happen to become really the best type of customers.
Those were definitely the golden days. And it's a shame Tweeter shut down. And that's kind of like when I started migrating and trying to figure out where to go. And that's how I started bouncing around different states to try and find a job. Because I was there as Tweeter fell, right? So I was still there. They started laying people off. I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And then that's when I started migrating from Maryland to Virginia. And this is after I moved back from Orlando, because again, I went there at UTI, and then bounced from Maryland to Virginia, where I was in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is one of the wealthiest counties in America. And at the time, I mean, obviously the government still gets paid. So it's recession proof, right? And still doing high end stuff. And I was there for quite some time. But what brought you out of Tweeter to, I think your next job was Merrill Lynch?
Yeah, so I was, 2 things happened at once. One, I was accused of stealing. So back in Philadelphia, before I had a standing offer to my friends. Remember, it was 10 up or 20 up. 10 up for you as an employee, 20 up. So we're saying 20% above cost. And so 20 up was my standing offer to my friends. Hey, I'll do the work. I'll design the system for you if you want a stereo or whatever. And so I did a 20 up system for one of my buddies. And it was an Audi TT, which was new at the time. And the installers were complaining about they didn't get enough labor. And so I said, you know what, I'll eat my commission. I backed it out to 10 up. And I didn't remember all the particulars. I mean, I sold millions and millions of dollars of stuff, but it was something like they put like some 4-gauge cable in it, and I'd only charge for 8-gauge. They just used some scrap, in the shop to try to save some money so I could put some more labor on the ticket to help us offset the extra time it took to work on the Audi. And so like a year and a half later, I'm in Orlando. So when I graduated from Villanova, I packed my crap and I wanted to move to Orlando. And so I walked into the store, the Sand Lake store by the Florida Mall, and which served Isleworth and all the wealthy areas of Orlando. And I was in home audio at the time because home was much more efficient. You could sell a lot more stuff, make a lot more money, and so I loved them both. But home just made more sense as when I graduated from Villanova. I didn't want to be an engineer. I was making like $100,000 selling, and I'm like a top tier, top 10 salesman in the company. So I don't want to leave this, and I want to see where it would take me. So when I moved to Orlando, I'm there for maybe a year or so or something like that, 6 months. And they pulled me into a room and got the lights out, like the old, interrogation technique. Head of shrink, Ross, comes. By the way, Ross is my inspiration for 911s. He always had a 911 somehow. The guy that's in charge of theft was the only guy who made any money at the company. And so he's there grilling me. They're trying to catch me in a lie. And I'm like, I don't remember every single sale. And so they sent me home, and now I'm like I had a key to the store. I was the guy that closed out the register every day because I was the best at math. I mean, like they could have trusted me with their lives, and yet they're accusing me of stealing. And so they sent me home, and they were going to make a decision whether I was going to get arrested or they were going to let me off the hook. Now, this is over like $80. It was like $82 or something like that. And so they're dead to me, right?
And what year was this?
So this was 2003. Okay. So I was like 5 years into that path. And so I graduated in 2002 from Villanova. 2003, I moved in August of 2002 to Orlando. So 2003 is right around the time that I get accused of stealing. Right around that time, a guy came in my store, and I sold him a home theater. I sold him a TV. This is when like LCD was first coming out, and I tried to talk him out of the LCD, and he really appreciated the fact that I was honest, that even though it was an $8,000 42-inch, I think maybe it was a 37-inch Sharp, was the first LCD that had come out, and a flat panel LCD. And he ended up buying that and buying some other stuff. And he said, I'd really love for you to come and work for me. I work for Merrill Lynch. And so remember, we had same as cash financing. Remember those days? It was like 12 months. We had like 24 months same as cash financing. And if you remember the credit app, it was like GE Capital or something like that. In the bottom right-hand corner, you had to write what your income was as the app, on the application. And he didn't circle month or year because you could do it monthly or yearly. And so I had to ask him, I said, is that per month or per year? And he said, that's per month. I said, oh, okay. So I took his card. I get accused of stealing. I call him. It took me 13 interviews to get a job at Merrill Lynch because I looked like I was 12. Every time I went, I think I did a good job in the interview, but I looked like I was, they called me Opie Taylor. Now, I didn't know who Opie Taylor was at the time. And then I think the thing that finally got me the job was that I said, you guys keep calling me Opie Taylor. Opie Taylor's Ron Howard. He's a pretty successful dude, so you should probably give me a shot. And so so this is before the demise in 2004. I think when Tweeter went out of business, so late 2005, something like that, early 2006. And so I left in late 2004 to go be a financial advisor.
And what's funny is when Tweeter went out of business, like I said, that time it was kind of like the pits of the recession. Everything was kind of crashing in. And I was having the hardest time to try and find a job, and I didn't want to leave where I lived. And my dad worked for T. Rowe Price, right? So he almost got me a job at T. Rowe Price.
You're close.
So we were very close to staying on that same path.
So I kept thinking, I need to get a real job. Right. Passion, it's too young and stupid. Passion is not a real job. I didn't need to go to Villanova to get this job selling stereos. So I always kind of looked down on my path. Like, I was just following my path. All my buddies still have crappy jobs doing some, they have great jobs, quote unquote, like, great, the American dream of being an engineer at Lockheed Martin, making $110,000. But to me, especially now that I know I'm an entrepreneur, I'm so glad that I've taken the wrong job, not real job.
That's what makes you learn everything along the way.
But I did leave the happy to chase the money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't immediate money. So when I went to Merrill Lynch, I went from making, I think I was on track to make $110,000 that year at Sound Advice. And I had to take a salary of $39,999. So I took a 60% pay cut to go to Merrill Lynch with no, and by the way, that $39,000 goes away in 24 months. And you're at zero. So you eat what you kill. You eat what you what you get, if you will. And so if I look back and think about the progression of my life, and that I had regular jobs working for the man, if you will, and then the next evolution toward working toward entrepreneurship is to work for a company where you're commission based. But remember, we weren't responsible at Tweeter for the customers. The customer just walked in the door. So that you got the customer. And so that's why you're compensated okay, but not really well. You're getting paid a small percentage of the profit. And then the next step was Merrill Lynch, where they have a platform, but there's no one walking in the door.
Customer.
So they give you a desk, a phone, and then they don't even give you a phone book. You got to go get your own phone book. You got to figure out. So it's very rare. The reason it took 12 or 13 interviews to get the job is it's very rare for a young man to make it in that world. The only people that have money are generally older people, and older people don't trust young men, and rightfully so. And so it's very rare for, there's like a 90% attrition rate from the training program, and then even a higher, probably 99% attrition rate for people under the age of 35. And I was 24, 23, starting to try to get the job, finally got the job at 24. And then they give you a desk and a phone and say, figure it out. But it's that next evolutionary step in creating something from scratch, and that you're kind of building a business, but you're building it inside of an architecture. Whereas Tweeter, you're just taking ups, you're taking leads, you're taking customers that walk in the door. You may start to develop a customer base that, and develop some loyalty with your customer base. In general, they're doing all the work to do the marketing, the advertising, the sending out, advertising in the newspaper, all that stuff on TV to get customers in. Merrill Lynch isn't doing any of that. But Merrill Lynch was a quote unquote real job, right? I didn't know anything about money, right? I had to ask like a friend, like, when the Tweeter had a 401k, like, what is this thing? What do I do with this? It's unbelievable how naive I was, especially even as a young man. I was very mature for my age, but I just didn't have much of an interest in that stuff, in 401k or IRAs or anything like that. But I'd actually accumulated a decent amount of money. I think I'd rolled over like 30 or 40 grand that I'd accumulated in the Tweeter 401k when I made the transition over to Merrill Lynch. So I was contributing to it. I didn't know much about it. But so I went into the financial world very differently. It wasn't like getting hired at Tweeter where I was already in the know.
Right.
And that was part of what intrigued me, is that there's this whole new thing, because I memorized 90% of the 16-digit SKUs on the monster cables. What was component video cable? Was like 50644 23 something 618 or something like that. So I'd memorized all of the numbers. So I didn't have to like go to the back and look at the monster cable SKU. And so now I'm in this new world where I don't know anything. I didn't study it. I didn't have a business course in school. And so I didn't study in engineering school. I studied at Tweeter. Now I get to study something that I know nothing about that is really interesting to me. But it's the same concept. You're taking a technical product, a mutual fund, an ETF, a stock, some sort of insurance garbage or something, and taking that technical topic, putting some pieces together to build a system, and then attempting to explain that to somebody who doesn't know any better. And the magic of this transition is that guy who came in my store became my first real life mentor. The first model that I could follow and I could replicate. And so he sort of led me down a path to be successful in that gig.
That's cool. So at what point are you transitioning from Merrill Lynch to what will become Obsessed Garage?
Many, many years later. So 2014.
How long are you at Merrill Lynch?
So I was there for 13 years. I guess technically 11, and then 2 years at Raymond James, but same career. I switched firms. So 2014, we have our second child. Well, Michelle has our second child. I happen to be there, and I hate it when they say we are pregnant. That's freaking nonsense. I have nothing to do with that. So I have this struggle. And I didn't know I had obsessive compulsive disorder at the time. I had this struggle when I have this trigger when I go to the doctor, I pass out. And so it was always this joke. I used to be super fit and my hairline was straight. I was an athlete. I played volleyball when I was at Villanova and just continued to play all throughout adulthood, playing all different types of sports. And so it was always this joke, the big, strong Matt, Falk can't handle a needle and he passes out. But it's like you die and come back. So it's pretty traumatic. And so in 2014, I pass out in the stupid delivery room. I shouldn't even have been in there.
I almost passed out too.
And then
the first time you see a child being born, it's kind of a show. I was just not experienced.
I'm sitting in the corner. I'm sitting in the corner. I can't see anything. There's a blanket on me and I'm out cold. So, and I'm out cold when they give her the epidural. Yeah. So, that's how bad I am, So anyway, a week later, I almost pass out in a store. And so it was the first time in my life where I almost passed out somewhere outside of the doctor's office. Something in my brain broke. And then I entered an infinite anxiety loop. Now, I was the senior resident director, so I was managing the market for Merrill Lynch. I had 300 clients, so I'm managing $300 million. I got 2 partners. I've got 15 employees I'm responsible for. But yet I was the one that was in control of everything. I wouldn't let anybody help me. I thought I was awesome. I thought I was the man. And so I'd taken on all this weight combined with this introduction of anxiety, and my freaking world exploded. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. And so I had to figure out how the heck am I going to get out of this. Before I would have scoffed at the idea of, why can't you just reason out of this, you idiots? What do you need to go to a psychiatrist for? That's crazy. You're stupid. That was me before this humbling. And so I melt down. I get to this goofy psychiatrist, and he puts me on some Prozac, and then that Prozac makes me lose my athletic. It changes my physiology, and that's the chubby old man you see today is because of that crap. So they put me on these happy pills, but I was open to suggestion for the first time in my life. I didn't know anything anymore. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. And so I went and met this goofy therapist, and we came to the conclusion I need to make some friends. I had a 911 at the time, a Carrera S. I was getting a GT3. It was on order. I had an F80 M3 that was coming. I had an E92 M3 at the time. And so I had these great cars, but in Merrill Lynch, you're taught not to show that to anybody or share it with anybody. And so he came to the conclusion, you need to let people know who you are and let some people in. And I think he meant meet your neighbor. Yeah. I got a spreadsheet out and tried to make what's the most efficient way to meet the most amount of people possible. So I went on the forums and started journaling. I always wanted somebody to do this, to journal every detail of the car, every, radar detector, car stereo, every part and piece, how they washed it, how they detailed it. And so I went on Renlist and M3 Post because I got a launch F80 M3 and I got the very first 991.1 GT3. It was sapphire blue, and I started sharing those two cars, which were really in vogue at the time. And that was my way to get out of my head, let some people in, and it really did work. I mean, it really did help me kind of get back to baseline, in that I was writing every night. I would take photos, I would write descriptions. And then somebody said, it'd be a lot better if you made a video of this, of sharing how I wash a car. And I said, that's not a bad idea. So I set up my camera and just started talking to it. The first video was like, 2 hours long or something, unedited. It's out of focus. Can't hear it. Can't hear what I'm saying every time I turn my head this way and left to right. And that's how Obsessed Garage was born. I mean, I didn't know it was Obsessed Garage. It was just the Matt Moreman YouTube channel. And I very quickly garnered this attention that I'd never had before. But it was other people, it was like my story was resonating with others. Mm-hmm. I wasn't talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. I wasn't talking about my struggles. I was just talking about what I loved that I wasn't allowed to at Merrill Lynch, because they told you don't show people that you're too successful. Mm-hmm. So I just started letting others in, and and that's how this whole thing started, this sharing experience.
It's so funny too, because like you were talking about your first video. My first YouTube video ever is my most successful, and it's because a buddy said, "Hey, you should show people how to do this," right? And it's a video that is how to hand lay carbon fiber, right? And it's like you said, out of focus. The audio is horrific. You can barely even comprehend the steps based on how it was laid out. But it was good enough to be a outline of how to do it, right? And that video, out of all the cool shit that I've done to date, I mean, that trounces anything that I've ever put out, right? That video has, I don't know, like 6 or 7 million views, something like that. Yeah. And all the other stuff is just a pittance compared to that just one random video.
It's crazy. I don't have a single video over like 600,000 views out of the 1,000. I made 3,000 or 4,000 videos. It's just, you never know what's going to hit, what hits and gets in the algorithm and takes off. And apparently nothing I ever do is going to ever hit, but one of these days it'd be nice.
Well, it's funny. And, this is kind of fast forwarding to where we're at today, but we'll go back to your storyline. But just like I've come to realize that the most simplistic things that I post, the most relatable things that I post get the most engagement. It's for you, like I said, how to wash a car, or just something that it's second nature. You don't even think that needs attention, but it's the most simplistic title, the most simplistic task is getting the most attention, because on the grand scheme of things, that's what a lot of people are searching out that either don't know, or they're just getting into it, or whatever it may be. That gets the most attention. Even still for me today, I can post a picture of a full build of just a trunk that's gorgeous and elaborate and dimensional, but then I can post a picture of like just an acrylic speaker adapter. And it seems like that does far better than anything else that's more extreme.
It's funny you mentioned the first thing that popped in my head when you said something about it. You make it simple for people to understand. And this is like the double-edged sword with me. I don't post anything for anybody else ever. It's for me. Mm-hmm. It goes back to the whole thing started. I had no agenda. I didn't have some grand plan, like I'm going to do this business. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur still.
You were trying to answer your own questions, right? Making content.
Yeah, I was just trying to get out of my own head, and then I'm like, I just want to share something. And this is what I know. I didn't know I was, this like preeminent car washing guy. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that could be a thing, because detailers are certainly really great paint correction people, but in the car and washing cars, I cared more about washing than anything, because to me, washing was the thing that prevented the need to detail. And so detailing was a result of me wanting to be able to wash the car better. And so I had no concept, I had no idea that anyone would care. I didn't care that anybody cared. I just wanted to just talk, just stop taking it all in on my own. And I continue that thesis today. And that's part of the reason why that me sharing what I want to say is not broadly appealing. And I think I'm okay with that, because the people that do get it, they understand that, we can have a real relationship instead of this like TikTok transaction that, people are pursuing to try to get as many nonsense views as possible. I think that the way that I've done it is quite a bit different, but the general thesis has been, if there's something that I'm interested in, and if I can at least share it in a digestible way, that the right people will see it. And having the right people see it helps keep the nonsense out of your life, which to me has been really satisfying.
Right. So would you say that what started, I guess, your evolution into Obsessed Garage was you configuring this just absurd, silly, high engineered pressure washer?
No.
Or did it start before that?
So what happened is I started to gain some traction, and I was doing it at Merrill Lynch. So this is 2014 and 2015. After I transitioned from doing just the journals to really focusing on YouTube and making videos. I was getting asked so much, like people wanted me to put links to all the stuff. Like, I don't have freaking time for that. I was making like $500,000 at Merrill Lynch, and I can't be wasting too much time on this. My wife is giving me a hard time because I'm always taking photos and editing all night. And so everybody in my life is like, you shouldn't be sharing that because you're showing off and all this stuff. So everybody's telling me, no, don't do this. But I thought that this could be a way that I didn't have to do. I was doing wine tastings. I don't drink. Ever. I've never had a drink in my life. I was doing golf seminars. I've never played a round of golf. I have no interest in golf in my life. So I'm hosting like a pro and then, wearing a suit and trying to convince people to become clients. And so I'm doing these things and I'm like,
this is amazing.
I think I had maybe 5 or 6,000 subscribers. I'm like, I bet you there's a good percentage of those 5,000 people watching me that would really want me managing their money. Because I'm freaking crazy. I was the person you wanted to manage your money. I'm telling you, I was really freaking good at that. Not at the schmoozing and the financial advisor part of it, but the structure of organizing your portfolio. You wanted me to do that for you. Not ideas, like I wasn't a good stock picker or anything like that, but like structuring the portfolio and getting, the returns you needed to get to hit the goals you're going to want to hit. I was the guy. And so I thought that what eventually became Obsessed Garage, I thought this was a conduit for me to not have to do freaking golf lessons ever again. Right? I thought that that's what it was. So this whole 2014, it was probably mid 2015 when I started to gain some traction. So 15, 16, those 2 years, the whole point of it, I thought this is what I was telling myself, the justification for all the time I was spending editing and then taking pictures of products and things like that, and sending links to like the Krenzel pressure washer on Amazon. The whole point of that was to show people I was really smart, so maybe they would let me manage their money. I was trying to figure out how could I do that. The problem is people thought I was a car detailer, and they couldn't figure out like how's a car detailer have like $250,000 worth of cars. Especially back then, because there weren't really any like high-end shops really at the time, maybe 1 or 2 in the world. The coatings hadn't taken off yet. Paint correction was a thing, but not really a thing. And so, detailing has changed, tremendously over the last few years. So I just thought this is a bridge for me to connect who I am to the people that should be hiring me to manage their money so that I never have to market again. I can just share what I love and then people would then let me manage their money. I thought that was the plan. And so the reason I started retailing, I called them, I was buying everything from Detailer's Domain, that I could. And Detailer's Domain is in New Jersey, and Phil was the owner of Detailer's Domain. And I called them. He didn't know who I was, but I called them. I had maybe 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers, and I called them. So this is probably this is like mid 2016, and I said, "Hey man, I think I'm on to something here. Would you like to partner? Like, I'll send everybody to you." And maybe we like split the margin or something. We split it or something like that. I don't really want to be shipping. I don't want to be retailing. I don't want to be packing. And he told me, Matt, there are no margins in this. There's no margin available. I'm happy for the links, but So I'm thinking, I'm making 500 grand, 600 grand, something like that at Merrill Lynch. I'm like, well, if there's no margin, I don't want to waste my time. So I was sending everybody. So I built obsessgarage.com. So I had to create a name. And so I called it obsessgarage.com. I built the website. My buddy at church set me up on WordPress. He made the Hex logo for me. I need to get him to sign an NDA. Someday he's going to come sue me when that's worth, $1 billion. But he made that for me, set up the site, said, here you go. And so I set up the site so that way I didn't have to link products in the video. I could just put one link to the Obsessed Garage page. And it wasn't me retailing anything. It was just a WordPress blog. Here's the hose reel. Here's the fittings. Here's the pressure washer. Here's all the stuff. Then late 2016, I go to SEMA. And now Phil's really starting to court me because now I have 70,000 subscribers. I met my friend Adam LZ. My channel kind of blew up for a short period of time when we started doing stuff together. And so Phil's he sees the light, but he didn't want to pay me. He wanted me to put the packages on Instagram or on Amazon, and I would just get the referral credit and he wouldn't have to pay that. So some weird convoluted thing. And I agreed to it. And then I came home and my Amazon account got shut down. I just punched the wrong password in or something. They just closed the account. So I'm like, crap, this is going to be a waste of time. I don't want to build my house on somebody else's land. So I started making some calls. The other thing that was really annoying is that it was 13 links to put together the Krenzel pressure wash. Mm-hmm. I had to send links to all these different places to go get it. And half the sites were crashed and people couldn't get the things that they wanted. So I'm getting 200 emails a week of where do I get this or that? And I'm like, screw all these people. I'm just going to call these companies and try to put together the package. Now, I didn't realize the package was $1,575. I'm like, oh shoot, no one's going to buy that. That's a lot of freaking money and the pressure washer you can only use for your car because it does low pressure, high flow. But I had found all the fittings and parts and pieces because when I was done with my $1,200 German pressure washer, I wanted to wipe it down, disconnect it, get all the water out, put it back in my cabinet. No one was using quick disconnects. No one had a short gun. No one was using foam cannons, all of that stuff. And so it was hard to find. It was hard to get. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to try to aggregate this. January 15th-ish of 2017, I launch 13 videos on YouTube right the second. I just hit click and all the videos went live. I lost 5,000 subscribers right then and there. They said, screw this. What? Because people got all these notifications for 13 videos and most of them were a 2-minute video on a 1/4-inch quick disconnect. Mm-hmm. They're like, this is junk. I don't want to watch this. Mm-hmm. So all these Adam LZ followers just canceled, unsubscribed from me. But the next morning I woke up and I had a few hundred emails in my inbox and where do I sign up? Where do I get one? Sold $50,000 in pressure washers the next day. The rest is history. Mm-hmm. So I think we're approaching 20,000 Krenzel pressure washers today.
Yeah, because what's happening in that moment is you're staying true to yourself and you're adjusting the channel to fit what kind of content you want to put out. And if you lose people, so be it, right? I mean, it's not what you do isn't for everybody. What I do certainly isn't for everybody, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, you got to stay true to you, your passion.
You don't have to, but I don't know any other way.
I don't know any other way either, right? I got to stay detailed. I'm not going to do something that I don't think is true to what I would do. Because I get people all the time inquiring about really high end SPL builds, but I'm not a fucking SPL guy. I'm a SQ guy, right? So I'm not going to.
Right.
You can throw all the money in the world at me to do an SPL build, but I'm not going to do it because that's not who I am. If I don't feel like I can do it better than anyone else for what you're paying me, I'm not going to do it because I have to give you the product that I know that you're going to get and receive and be like, wow, this is the most amazing experience I've ever had.
Yeah. I mean, that being everything to everybody is potentially let's just say general retailer. You're going to retail like in detailing. I'm going to retail every product. And so I knew very early on, I'm not interested in that at all. I don't want to be selling chemical guys and some nonsense garbage and mothers and junk like that, just so that I can try to capture everybody. I knew in the very beginning, I said, look, I'm only going to sell one soap. One, not 10, not 20, not 30, one. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, my margins aren't going to be as good. So I'm going to have to figure out some other things to do in order to make this work. Because I want to find what's the best soap, what's the best wheel brush, what's the best wax, what's the best wheel cleaner, what's the best interior cleaner, and then aggregate and put those together. And I knew that no one else has ever done that in this world of car washing. And very few people have done that anywhere in anything, right? I mean, you're doing that in installs, and then you have a product line, and then you end up building systems based on what you're curating. You're putting it together. What products worked well together. And so I had accumulated this body of knowledge because I had a really good job. I was making lots of money. I could buy a lot of crap and throw it away when it didn't work. And so I had lots of experience at a pretty quick clip. Plus, I had been able to fly around the country and get trained by some of the best detailers. So even though I'm not a professional, I didn't have as much time under the machine. By the way, there's a lot of pushback in the beginning of this because detailing is a very blue collar, and here's this white collar douchebag in here, disrupting the thing. It was me and what was it, Larry Cosella, MONYC, and then me and the junk man. And the junk man kind of never took off. And so I'm in here making all these videos and getting all this attention and detailing when I'm really don't have any business doing it. But I did really know what I was talking about because I freaking loved it. And I loved it more than anybody. And so to this day, I still get a lot of flack from people about not knowing. I've said, let's go. Let's have a knowledge off. I tell you what, let's polish a panel and see what freaking happens. I might lose, but I'm going to gain your respect. That's darn sure. So that was one of the things in the beginning that I knew that being a retailer and just trying to make money was not the thing to do because I didn't need it. I was just doing it. I thought it would be great if I could make a car payment with the amount of money that I make on selling stuff.
So growing up, was there anything that kind of ignited this competitive nature that you have in wanting to learn and excel and continue? Because those type of people are few and far between. I feel like there's always something that happens in your life that makes you that type of person.
Well, I think it's a lot of insecurity and fear. I grew up in a single wide trailer. My parents were really young and they're, in the late teens when they had me, and they, high school educated and, extremely hardworking people. But I was just sort of an anomaly in my family in that I was blessed with the ability to show up and get 100 on every test. I didn't know how to study. I didn't know what studying was. I just could learn things, just could figure things out. And so I always knew I was destined for college. I didn't know how I'd get there. I didn't know how to pay for it. I always knew what I loved. I always knew what thing I loved. To this day, I wish I knew what I knew now because I would have started my own home theater business, 100%. It'd have been worth, $500 million by now for sure. I just know it. And it has nothing to do with being smart or great. It was just, I love it so freaking much. And I loved it so much then. If I had known, so I had no model for business. No one in my family in any generation ever owned any kind of business, was any kind of entrepreneur. It was just be a really good employee. So I thought, man, I didn't have the grades or the background or the upbringing to become the CEO of Merrill Lynch, but I thought I could be a really great number 4 or 5, be some executive or something like that. I thought I was destined for something great. I just didn't know what it was. I had no clue because even while I was a tweeter and I guess I was very passionate about that, I thought I was cheating. I thought you can't do this. This isn't a real job. You can't you can't chase passion and do this forever. It's just a temporary thing. I had to go get the real job at Merrill Lynch. Yeah. And so that all comes from less than, I think. We all have a story of something, whether it's some sort of trauma or something, or divorce and family, or some sort of PTSD that happened in your past, or military base. Mine, I think, was poor, but poor with a lot of structure and a lot of care for. My mom cleaned the floor every single day in the trailer. We had the nicest trailer in the trailer park with all the crackheads, and so there was care,
a lot of pride,
work ethic, pride. But because I was born smarter than my family, I just got really, really freaking lucky. And then I was able to use that to go do something with it. So the confluence of events and that less than, that insecurity, that, oh man, I don't belong here. I never felt like I belonged at Tweeter. I felt like I didn't belong at Merrill Lynch. I felt like when I was the senior resident director, I didn't belong as a manager. I was always the young guy, even when I was, playing sports. So when I was at Villanova, I'm like, I don't belong here. And so that gives you a chip that makes you chase and make sure that I think that I want to know. I didn't belong on YouTube. I didn't belong in detailing all this stuff. I think that lack of, I don't think I've ever said this before. I don't know that I've ever really thought about it this way, but I just was an imposter. Still am. That's what motivates me.
No, I can totally relate to that. I mean, for me, I was adopted. My biological mom had me when she was 14. Brought up in a family that raised me. Like, I was abused when I was like 3 years old, and then went into the service, and then I was put with this family, and then this family adopted me. They got a divorce. I grew up with a single dad. He was like my best friend. Fast forward up to high school, my plan was to play baseball at LSU, go to college, and do all this other stuff. But it got to this point where he's like, all right, I can get you a really, really nice car, or you can go to this private high school. And I'm like, what fucking question is that? Like, my first car was a 1999 Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX, and all-wheel drive, car audio. 425 horsepower. I built the engine, and that's kind of like was my template to build cars, right? And here I am, like 16, 17, 18 years old. I'm showing this car up and down, the East Coast, and winning hot import nights and all these CCA shows and all this type of stuff. And that's kind of what really fueled my career. But it was based on a stupid question that my dad asked. He was just like, do you want a nice car, or do you want to go to a private high school and then go to college?
Might have gotten out on the cheap on that one.
So I took the car, and then from there I went to UTI, and I feel like UTI, I knew I didn't want to be a mechanic, and I wanted to understand the 5-volt side of the car, right? Because you got the 12-volt side and you got the 5-volt side. 5-volt side is your engine, 12-volt side is the interior electronics. And for me, I knew I couldn't be a master of my craft unless I learned the whole car, right? Because there's a lot to a car, but just car audio or the interior electronics is just only half of it. I want to know if something that I do impedes on the rest of the car, and if that happens, how do I fix it? So after I moved back to Maryland, I actually worked for Lexus in Towson, Maryland for a little bit. And I realized it was the worst job in history, right? Because you spend 5 hours replacing a cam seal just for the car to not leak anymore, and there's no payoff, right? There's no client that's happy, that's like, oh my God, I'm so happy I got my car back and it does this really cool thing now. No, they're pissed off because they spent all this money, the shit just doesn't leak anymore. There's no gratification at all for that job for me, right? It's not saying anything about other mechanics. It's just I didn't get the reciprocation of the work that I put in and the passion that I put in. Whereas in the automotive fabrication and car audio, I get to see fucking grown men cry in a car when they're listening to their audio system. And it's fun because, like, once you are in depth in the fabrication side, you don't know which part you like more. Is it the fabrication? Is it the sound quality, right? Generally, it's a sound quality, I assure you. Just because when you have a car audio system done correctly that has staging with depth and all this other stuff, it's like an ungodly experience that most people have never listened to before. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, I dig that experience. That I've been following you for years. I'm like, man, one of these days I'm gonna buy a car just to send to you, but I gotta freaking be there. I want to be a part.
It's funny. That's that's how most of my clients.
I sense a YouTube video coming.
That's how most of my clients have transcended. Like, I get emails that say, hey, like I just had one last week. I don't want to give too much detail away, but he's a CEO of a car company, and he said, hey, I bought this Ferrari Portofino just for you to build. And for me, I'm just like, that's awesome, right? Because that's my passion. That's what I love. Like me, I drive my old wife's 2008 Subaru Tribeca with 200,000 miles. It has the Thanos of lights on the dashboard. It's got blue for windshield washer fluid. It's got yellow for check engine. It's got red for differential light. Like, it's got every color on the dashboard, right? I drive the worst car of all time, and I get my gratification in doing the cars that I get to work on a daily basis, right? So the audio, the car, like, for me, driving a cool car doesn't move me because I get to take that gratification. Like, I'm sitting in an awesome car every day, listening to great sound every day, and I only drive 2 miles to work, if that. So I feel like I don't need that in my life.
You're better for it.
Yeah. I got more money for
There's
it.
only so
I
much.
could never. I could never.
There's only so much bandwidth for passion.
100%.
You know, there's so much room, and you know, I've gotten myself into trouble because there is a such thing as too much. You know, too much of a good thing. You know, for me, it's, I've got freaking audio. Like, at one point, I had like every SVS subwoofer and all this NAD equipment, and just like $150,000 worth of audio equipment just stacked up, like, just stressing me out. Like, what am I going to do with this stuff? Like, because I wanted it all to try out and test out, and it was worth the struggle, because now I have a body of knowledge that's worth something on that particular project. But that was to do some sweet audio in the garage, which everybody gives me a hard time about, which is nonsense. What are the two places you listen to music in? The garage and the car, the two worst listening environments in the world. I think you can make it decent. If you can make it great in the car, if you have someone like you to do it, but I think you can make it nice in the garage as well. But yeah, I think there's only so much room in this world for passion. Like, I live in Florida, so I feel like I should have some guns, and I don't give a crap about guns. And so I went to the place, and of course, what I just wanted was the me or the you of guns, right? I wanted to go to you and say, what should I get? And you say, you give me the top-down sales. And that's so rare to find. It's such a rare thing to find. And they're out there, but that's a hard person to find in every category. Whether it's you're buying a new bathtub, you want the bathtub expert, or you're buying a new AR-15 or whatever you're getting. It's magical when you happen to find somebody who's passionate about that particular subject, because there's only so much room.
Yeah, and like I said, much like you, the content that I put out revolves around the passion that I have behind what I do, and therefore the inquiries I get, I can equally tell the same amount of passion, right? And I can prioritize that email based on how much time and effort you put into this email to ask me about the system of your dreams, right? You're saying, oh, I competed in the 90s, I'm getting back into this, and you're listing all this stuff, like, to the 10th degree. Yep. Like, I know you're serious and you're passionate, and that aligns with what I do. So I know that this is a good inquiry versus, me and I sent Gary an email the other day of this dude.
I just bought 3 supercars. What's the best? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And what car did he say he had? I already forget. Yeah.
F50.
He said
he had 3 F50s.
3 F50s that he just bought that he doesn't have, and the only pictures he sent me were like screenshots of stuff you can find on the internet. And I'm just like, this guy's not serious. Yeah. But like I said,
careful, he's probably a podcast listener.
Oh well, so be it. You're called out. So like, that's the content that I put out. I have always exuded passion, and when I talk to people in the sales process, people understand how passionate I am. And I feel like passion drives 90% of your sales.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I don't know how many people have started out with an idea that they might have a $3,000 audio system and they wind up spending $30K. And that's just like one example of stuff that happens all the time. And people get excited. Like, that is the number one thing you need to have as a salesman, is just that passion and excitement, because our job is to get people excited. I make this analogy all the time that, like, everyone has indispensable income. It doesn't matter what bracket you're in. You're spending money on something. Could be drugs, right? Could be
Mhm.
could be watches, could be vacations, could be anything. But our job is to find that passionate articulation to get people to understand why they should spend money on what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
You will find those people. Those people seek the content out. That's why I love YouTube. That's why I love social media, because I always find that YouTube, I take the time to make one YouTube video on a car, talk about it, break it down. And then that's a living ad that just sits on the internet forever.
Yeah, and you can aggregate a like-minded audience. I mean, how many people are like that in your town? You know,
Right.
50.
Yeah, zero,
Yeah.
zero, pretty much. I'm in Delaware. Most people have never even heard of Delaware.
How much soap I'd be selling, like if I was here in town?
Yeah.
None, zero. You know, none. So the social media platforms really allow us to do that, and that was the big epiphany for me as I started to figure out, okay, maybe this isn't a bridge. So I have a business coach, and so I retained that coach. I think late 2015, I took a business course that I didn't want to take. My partner, so I was doing Obsessed Garage, and I had two partners, a senior partner and a junior partner at Merrill Lynch. We eventually left Merrill Lynch to go to Raymond James, because Raymond James, the reason why I wanted to leave was because they were going to allow me to do Obsessed Garage and then call it Obsessed Wealth Management, because I just thought, there was this connection, there was this conduit. Somehow I'm going to break down this wall, because you can't advertise on YouTube or on most social platforms. You're just not allowed through the FINRA, SEC, stuff like that. So we go to Raymond James. My partner thinks I'm crazy. He wants to split, so we split up the partnership, right? So he's the one telling me this is stupid. You shouldn't do this. You're wasting your time. My wife is not really telling me no, but she's like, at some point, you're going to have to do something with the family here, because you're working 3 jobs. And, so my partners are saying no. Merrill Lynch was saying no. Raymond James was saying yes, but they really didn't know what I was talking about. They really didn't believe me. And so in 2017, I sold $1.8 million worth of stuff. It's freaking sick. My parents were shipping part-time microfiber towels, car washing packages, Krenzel pressure washers out of their house, and my t-shirts. So I did $1.8 million in sales at, say, 30% margin. So I made like $400,000 on the side.
That's incredible.
Just doing something I had no idea. And now it's significant. So I'm making 500, and I give you numbers just as context. Mm-hmm. I'm making $500,000 in my real job, and then I'm making almost that on my side hustles. Now I'm starting to get confused. And my business coach said something to the effect of, I said, man, in the very beginning, I'm like, what if I could sell like 50 pressure washers? He said, what if you could sell 5,000? Because he knew all along that I was destined for Obsessed Garage. Mm-hmm. But Obsessed Wealth was what I'd spent 15 years. I was a certified financial planner, chartered investment and management analyst. So I was a CFP, CIMA, CHFC, CFM, CRPC. I had like 37 letters behind my name. I was a senior vice president, senior resident director. I wanted to be like the rock star of the industry. So I felt so invested, like I could never let this go. And then it all got taken from me, which is the best thing that ever happened. Now, I didn't feel like it at the time, but in March of 2018, a few months before, I had made my first vlog. I wasn't in a vlog, and I was just making videos. So I made a vlog. I made a bet with my buddy. We did a weight loss challenge, and the challenge was, if I lost, he got my GT350 and my Raptor, and I had to drive his non-air conditioned, basically open header, 180,000 mile Ford Focus, manual Ford Focus.
So how was it driving
down
that?
Windows. I lost. It was horrible. And I made a 2-week vlog. It was 2 weeks of a day in the life of the obsessed. And so I took my camera everywhere with me, including my office. I took it with me in the parking lot in my office. And eventually some people in compliance, some young guys in compliance that were fans of mine, were watching the video. They must have told their boss, said, hey, look how cool this is. Next thing I know, March of 2018, I'm in a room with 12 regulatory attorneys from the SEC. I'm in with the head of compliance for Raymond James Corporate. I had to go to Tampa. The manager of the region, the manager of him, the manager of the state, the manager of the East Coast of the country. and then a bunch of note takers, and then some guy. I walk in, my picture's on the screen, and they hand a binder to everybody of everything I've ever sent, all the transcripts of all the videos of things that I said. And
it's like Twitter all over again.
I'm in trouble. Now, again, I have a key. I'm the biggest rule follower. I love this place. I'm a champion for everything. I'm the biggest recruiter of other people to come to this career path. And here we are again. I'm in freaking trouble. I'm in trouble because the rules are ridiculous. The rules should be rewritten. I don't want to break the rules. I'm not breaking the law. I'm only want to break the ones that are stupid. Yeah. The speed limit should not be 35. When I have a GT3 RS on a back road, I'm going to go whatever speed limit seems safe to me. I know what the right rules are. And so here's the problem. I'm working for a company, right?
You're not working for yourself.
But they trick you into thinking that you own your own business, but you don't own squat, right? Again, remember this progression. I'm using their platform and finding my own clients. So I was under the guise that I had built my own practice. Really, I didn't. So their name, their reputation was at risk. And so 3 months later, they strung me along for 3 months, and then eventually they walked me in and fired me. So my 14-year practice that I had built, they just took it. And now I'm out on the street. But I was on track to do $4 million in sales, so I'm not broke. Right. So I'm on track to do $4 million in sales that year of product. And now I would have never quit. I would have just kept trying to do both. And I was starting to get clients. And I'm pretty confident that I would have become one of the biggest financial advisors in the country because my audience is your audience, right? So the guys that are the same type of guy. I mean, these are the guys that would be having me manage their money. And these guys would, I would have a few thousand of them. And I would have, infinite amount of assets that I'd be managing, but I wouldn't have given that up. I wouldn't have let it go. And because they took it from me, I thought what I would do, okay, I'll sell my house, I'll sell my cars, I'll get like a GTI or like a Golf R or something like that. That way I have something I could detail and make videos on. My parents had just moved down, so they were now working with me. They'd quit their jobs. So the three of us could make this happen. I'll just get a smaller house and we'll figure it out. Luckily, I didn't have to do that because I think that year we ended up at 8 or 9 million in sales or something like that. I had 7 employees by the end of the year, and the rest is history. But man, it was, especially with my OCD and vasovagal, I was having a really hard time with life. Like my character was called into question. I was, sort of attacked. My partners, everybody's just telling me, no, this is terrible. Don't do this. Even my accountant says, absolutely do not do this. And sure enough, he regrets that, that comment. But it was obviously the best thing that ever happened to me. So in June of 2018, I was out on the street, but then very quickly, turned it into what is now today. So, and we're, I think, headed to the freaking moon because I love it. And now we're at the next echelon of my progression in business. There are no customers walking through the door, and there's no platform. You got to build it from nothing. Right. And luckily for me, the side hustle, I didn't people have an idea, an invention or whatever, and they leverage the farm. They borrow money against their house, and they try to get patents, and they spend all their money, and then they're broke because their idea doesn't work. I didn't have the balls to do anything like that. I had these two parallel things going on at the same time, so I was luckily able to make this nice, smooth transition into the other. But it didn't feel smooth because they fired me. I got fired. It's the only job I've ever been fired from because the sound advice thing, they didn't fire me. They didn't send me to jail, which would change the complete course of my life. This time, they walked me out the door and said, we'll come get your stuff. We'll put it in a box. It's pretty traumatic for a guy that wants to be nice and liked and all that kind of stuff. It was a pretty rough go.
So you've turned all that into essentially what would be anyone's dream job, building a car with no pressure and then being able to give it away. And you've done that a few times, right?
Yeah, I think I'm on my 7th car now. That concept came from I bought a car and spent too much money on it. I can't sell it. I'd sell it for like 50% of how much money I'm into it. And so my buddy Adam LZ had just done one and made like, $1 million on it or something. And I'm like, I'm not going to make $1 million, but I bet you I could at least get out of this. I could get out of this without losing, $100,000. And so, because think about all your customers, they put a $50,000 stereo on, and guess what that stereo is worth in the secondary market? $5,000 maybe.
The good news is a lot of that equipment can go from car to car also.
Well, and they're not doing it to increase the value of the car. Just you put wheels, tires, suspension.
Yeah, for sure. You never get out what you put in.
You're not going to get that out of it. Right. So the idea of giveaways and just, I think that the giveaway is a microcosm of the simple concept of if you can provide the world the value, and if you can, make it somewhat entertaining to a certain niche grouping of people, combine that with the reach that YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and these social platforms allow you to reach out of just your town and aggregate a bunch of like-minded people. You can create anything. I bought a freaking house in the mountains and have involved the audience, and it's a mansion in the mountains I could never afford, even today, and then just share it with the audience and have them help share in the cost of it, and they're happy because they're getting an equal exchange in value, and I'm happy that I got to do the project and share it with the world. And so making that stuff out of thin air that everybody tells you can't do, no one's going to do it, you can't rent out a house, they'll ruin it. But I would argue if you have the right people going to it, they're going to take better care of it than I would.
So when you're going into those projects, are you projecting the ad revenue and seeing if it's worth it?
No. Ad revenue has no decision at all. The YouTube channel makes like $60,000 a year or something like that.
So at what point are you like, I'm going to give a GT3 away or a Civic Si away?
So let's clarify. I'm not giving squat away. I'm selling a boatload of stuff that then generates enough profit to then allow me to draw somebody from a random number generator.
Got it.
So generally, like the last car I did, I made like a 280 grand profit net. So I was 150K into the car. I sold a bunch of crap, a bunch of stuff, good stuff. Yeah. But I sold a bunch of tchotchkes and a bunch of higher margin things outside of my normal sales, because that doesn't work. It doesn't work me giving away a $150,000 car out of my normal sales, because I don't make anything, right? And so this is a way for me to garner attention, the market. I get out of the car that I spent too much money on. I got to experience the car. I got to make the content. But the videos, the revenue of the videos has no bearing at all.
But that's my point. The Merrill Lynch of you is breaking down the other factors of how you're actually going to be able to do this efficiently, net profit, to be able to do it.
But see, I never ever lead with the result. So the money means, and this is the reason why I'm a terrible financial advisor, because I'd tell everybody to spend all their money. I'm always leading with the passion. I'm always leading with, can I engage with people? And then the money will come at the end of it. So like when I did the first giveaway, if I had lost it all, I was just rolling the dice. Yeah. But knowing that chances are this is a really great car, I did a really nice job on it, so chances are it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And then the results are generally, the advantage of not leading with the result is the results are generally much, much higher than they would have been had I actually chosen a result, if you know what I mean. So I spend zero time looking at YouTube analytics. I spend zero time. I have no idea how many views I get, other than if I happen to watch back a video. I'm not looking at ad revenue. I'm not looking at what does the best at what time. That's probably a mistake, but I don't do any of that stuff. It's probably why I have 300,000 subscribers instead of 2 million. Maybe it's my face too.
YouTube subscribers is a grind. I'm just going to say it's definitely a grind. You got to be, I've always said for years, if I could just put out consistent content, and I know if that I vlogged every event that I went to and people could get to know the person behind the build, I would do so much better. But I just don't have that bandwidth, right? I spent my whole 20s grinding, and I spent too much time on my career. And obviously, you only have so much bandwidth, right? Your family's going to take that
Well,
hit.
you have it. You have it, and you could always apply leverage and hire somebody. But you're not like I love cameras. I love computers. I love editing the video. I love not like artistic editing, but like putting it together. I love posting it. I love interacting. Without that, I would do like 25% because I'm passionate about the process of that. Because I tell people all the time, they're like, well, I want to make a YouTube channel, and they have a business of some sort. I said, well, do you love cameras? No, I'm not really interested. Do you love computers? Nah, I'm not really interested in that. And so you have to, it becomes a job to create content. For me, I love doing it. And it goes back to the benefit that I got from journaling and getting out of my own head, and the benefit of me being on a podcast like this. Like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to tell my story and get this out of my brain without the work that was required. So I think that positive reinforcement that I got from helping me get out of death's doorstep onto whatever path I was on. But you could, what I'm getting at is you could make the bandwidth if you like love that, but it's not the passion. So you're doing it because you have to do it. And so you're probably only doing about 25%, which is a lot, but you're only doing about 25% of what you would be able to create bandwidth for if it was your thing. But you have 10 other things that are your thing. Yeah. So that's the problem. Just so happens that the videoing and all of that happens to be one of my 10 things. Yeah. So I can produce a video. We probably produce on average probably 1.5 videos a day on average, 360.
Yeah. You put out a lot of content, and you have a podcast, a dialed in podcast that everyone listening now. And let's take a few steps back. The biggest reason I wanted to have you on this podcast to start is because for years I've seen so many similarities between like you and me throughout this process. And we're on two separate sides kind of the industry, right? There's so many people listening to this right now who are obsessed with so many things car that doesn't know Matt Moreman or Obsessed Garage, right? And vice versa. Like so many people in Obsessed Garage that doesn't know the capabilities of what can actually happen in car audio, right? Or the fabrication and all that kind of stuff. And that's why my first interaction with understanding Obsessed Garage and you was through the Facebook group, right? Because searching all these different Facebook groups, I found this one Facebook group, Obsessed Garage, where I saw all these enthusiasts who are like my key demographic clients. And like it was probably the first time I've ever posted somewhere in a Facebook group that just didn't take my shit down, right? And I feel like it didn't come down because it kind of spoke to what you stand for, which is like the obsessedness of anything car, right? Yeah. Because it shows all these people what's capable and what can be done to the highest level in this one category of car. And the feedback that I've gotten through the group is like, everyone's like, oh, I love when you post and blah, blah, blah. And like, I just have a lot of respect for that, just because, again, understanding more and more who you are as a person in your journey, I see the similarities of where we came. And I knew that this would be a good source for a lot of the people that listen to our podcast, because we actually have like a pretty good group of people that listen on average. I mean, we just had Chip Foose on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I knew that there would be a good merge, because anytime that I'm in Obsessed Garage Facebook group, I see all the mutual friends of mine who are actually a part of the Facebook group. And it's not a ton, right? The percentages don't work out how they should. So there's this big blind spot in the other aspect of car. And I felt like, I even messaged you like 2 years ago. It's been a while, of like, hey, you should come on the podcast. And, anytime we do our podcast, which doesn't happen often, because again, we don't have the same bandwidth. We have full-time jobs, and that takes priority. We're not just social media, but we always try and lead where things make sense. And obviously we just had Chip on a few episodes ago, And with you, it's that same sort of interweaving of a different audience that still is obsessed and still makes sense of exactly the type of people that listen to this podcast.
Yeah, and like I'm probably 10% of the way to you. Like I understand you and what you do. You understand what I do. You understand the car care. You understand that it's you're not gonna. I'm not going to go to your. Obviously, I don't have your artistic ability, but I understand that. I want to buy something from you someday. You want to buy some of the stuff that I have in the garage and stuff like that. And so there's an intersect for most people that if you're obsessed with car audio. And you're going to do a system like the level of what you're building, you probably, and you're listening to this podcast, you probably have, you probably would want some sonic cabinets with sonic, you probably want a new spawn lift. You probably want Cree lighting. You probably want some of these things that
you've done the diligence to put together so people don't have to do the homework, right? It's the same exact concept, but it's marrying the two together, which I've seen like this void for years.
I think it goes further than that. Like I couldn't marry together what you do, like without the artistic skill set, right? So, and chances are some of the products you're using, you would never even find, like you wouldn't even know where to get them.
That's one of the toughest things in our world is not only is there what you were talking about when you started in car audio, that system design and knowing the performance and what's going to work well together, but then taking that group that understands that and then the group that understands the vehicle technology moving forward, and then also take the sector of people that can fabricate at a high level and make something that's creative and accents the car and fits with the theme. And then you try to fill all three of those buckets with one person or shop, and that's a short list.
And what people are buying is all of the mistakes, right? Yeah. That's really what they're buying from me. All the mistakes I've made to build a garage or to put together to come to the conclusion of what actual thing 100%. To buy.
That's so valuable.
They're buying all of your screw ups, all of your fiberglass box that exploded, or all of your, you thought this was going to sound great and it actually sounds terrible, and all of that. This product was a lot of money, but it really isn't worth it. All that is mistake after mistake after mistake that creates this body of knowledge and this body of value that then, you're paying for that 20 plus years of screw ups is really what they're doing. But here's the key. In order to get to where you're at, there's no giving up, right? It's like you because you're passionate about it, you keep trying, keep chasing, keep looking for other things, keep looking to make it better. And the only way you can do that is if you're passionate about it, because if it's just a job, then you're just going to do the minimum, and you're just going to be building, you're going to be building square JL boxes and putting them in the back of an Escalade. That's what you're going to be doing. And
no offense, JL.
You're going to take a JL driver and you're going to make it some crazy, carbon fiber, enclosure that's some downfiring band pass disappears into the car sort of thing, right?
Right, and that's the other thing behind it, which has a lot with what you said, is like the people seeking out that type of work will find it, right? The only way that I could do a carbon fiber enclosure that's resin infused is going to be if I find the client that finds value in that, right? Because again, the regular shop would fall over dead if they realize what that enclosure would cost for a client to buy. But at the same point, Gary does a lot of stuff for manufacturers, a lot of prototype work, a lot of stuff that he really can't talk about.
Yep.
He builds a lot of stuff where the amount of money invested in that is a lot, right? So if you're just saying, hey, what does a center console cost for Porsche to make in a 911 from the ground up design? Like that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, most likely. So for me charging not even close to that, that's value. But doing it in the same way that Porsche would do it, the Porsche client who cares about the car and is obsessed with the car is going to pay that, because nobody else in the world's going to have anything like it. So when I did that GT3 with the carbon fiber subwoofer enclosure, resin infused and everything, that's just a way to speak to the car, speak to how it would have been built through Porsche, and then being able to also get paid the amount of money of time that I have invested in doing it like that.
Yeah.
And not just that, but all the time to learn those techniques and practice them.
Right. Yeah. Even if I had somebody that was going to pay me, I can't do it because I don't have the artistic skill set, the mechanical skill set, and all of the mistakes, all the body of knowledge, all the years of trial and error. So there's a big confluence of events that has to come together in order for all that. You have to have the customer, you have to have the money, you have to have the time, you have to have the expertise, you have to have the skill set, all of that kind of stuff. And that's in my world of this, of sharing products, of basically what I've become as a super retailer, like a very specific, very niche retailer of products because of all the freaking screw ups of buying the wrong hose reel, buying the wrong lights,
but there's so much value. Like so many people, like you've exposed the value behind the trial and error and the R&D, because like, again, I could say the same thing for like Tesla specific installations, which a lot of people will call me for just because a lot of people don't know how to install audio equipment in Teslas, right? I've understood and know every way to not do something in a Tesla, and I've screwed up enough to understand the exact procedure to do it correctly. And there's so much value in somebody who has a Tesla Plaid 2024 that's $150,000 and they don't want to screw up their car.
Yeah.
So trying to leverage that and understand how can I provide value to somebody across the country who's not willing to ship me the car, but how can I help them install their audio system correctly with the shop that is local to them?
Well, there's a fight for that, that knowledge, right? For me, it's the fight to, like, I want to buy professional grade stuff. Like, I want to have professional grade things in my garage. I want to have professional grade things in my life. The lights in this house, or each one of these recessed fixtures are they're like a couple $100. They're made for hotels and stuff like that. But I want the professional grade product because I want the quality, and I've got to fight for that. Like you got to be, and to get that light, I bought 5 other lights that I was willing to throw away. And so there's the pursuit. I think 100%. The pursuit
there's so much value in that,
because most would quit. Because the company still won't even let me put the frickin' price on the website. Right. So that would be something you'd quit on. They wouldn't call. They wouldn't take my call. They wouldn't hear from, they wouldn't listen to me. They would said no one's going to buy that. And so there's that struggle, that pursuit of making a better system, or the pursuit of taking a technically difficult vehicle to deal with because the electronics are so sophisticated in a Tesla. There's the pursuit, and then the fact that you didn't give up, which then at the end of all of the not giving up, when you hit all the roadblocks, is where I think the real value comes in the world.
Here's the perfect analogy. I think I just found the perfect analogy for what we're talking about. Think about when you and the wife are sitting on the couch scrolling through Netflix, right? If nobody gives you a recommendation, you're going to be spending 40 minutes scrolling through, right? Trying to find and then you're looking up reviews and you see one bad review. So you're like, yeah, fuck that. And you keep going. But if a buddy says, hey, watch this, it's awesome, there's no questions asked. You're hitting watch now and you're in. If it sucks, you're going to tell the buddy, like, that sucked. But at the end of the day, you're watching it, right? You're giving it the time of day. You're not doing any research. You're just going straight in with somebody that you trust. Same concept. And I think that's the greatest analogy of all time.
Yeah. And you wouldn't take that advice from somebody you just met that doesn't know you personally or doesn't understand, or that you don't know their background and how much effort they've put into that.
I'm the buddy. Yeah. I'm the buddy with the answer.
Exactly.
Yep.
You're the buddy with the answer, for that particular thing. And so, Netflix, that's a good example. I probably could be the guy to tell you what to watch because I've watched frickin' everything. And my gut, I know in my gut what is worth watching. Mm-hmm. And that gut reaction has some value because of all of the stuff I watched that I shouldn't have.
100%.
And so,
All the stuff
and
you got
that's
10 minutes into and threw away.
Right. There's so
no, I
much
probably watched the
value.
whole
Like
thing.
time is so valuable in the modern day and age of especially Americans. Because again, time is just so quick. It's so like the most valuable thing an American has is time. Right. So I think
That changes with age. You don't realize that when you're young, Matt. It takes
maybe it happens with age,
life
which would
experience
make
to
sense
realize
because
that.
you don't realize that when you're younger. But at the same point, I feel like in today's
I don't have a problem with that.
Time is so
I don't
valuable.
have a problem with time at all. I'm probably because I'm such a narcissist. I don't have time at all, or any issue with time. I have as much time as I need. Now, a lot of that is because of the obsessiveness of structuring things in life. And so, like, I have a freaking army of people that do everything for me. So that's that. But that takes a lot of structure and a lot of time to build that. So time is one of those things that I feel like I have an infinite amount of because I just manufacture it by adding leverage, by hiring somebody, and then figuring out how to pay for that leverage by the leverage. So when I hire somebody to do something, they're able to generate enough to cover them, plus give me a little piece of the action as well. And so that's why I watch all the stuff on Netflix. But see, I think the reason I have what it seems to be an infinite amount of time is because I can't. It's very rare for me to have a conversation right now and not be doing something else at the same time because I'm in constant state of panic and worry. I usually have to occupy both sides of my brain. So like if I'm watching something on TV, I have to be listening to a podcast and researching something or designing a garage or something like that. And so I feel like I have all this leverage in life. So maybe someday we can have a podcast about time management and I'll share some of my
100%.
thoughts.
I feel the same way. Like there's so many people that I talk to. Anytime that we're at industry events, you talk to other peers and you just get to know who they are and how they work and how their typical day is set up. Like me, I can never listen to music during a work day. I just can't. It's just, to me, it's a complete fucking waste of time because you're hearing the same song you've heard 1,000 times. I have to listen to a podcast and I have to be constantly learning something as I'm doing my day. Like I can't listen to music. I feel like that's the biggest waste of time ever. I have to be accelerating my knowledge to.
And who wants to listen to music if you can't listen critically?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't ever take time to listen to music. I was listening today when I was polishing. I have Dyne Audio Core 59 studio monitors on a NAD C685 preamp, and then two Core subs. So it's a pretty awesome. It's like a $20,000 garage system. And so sometimes I just like to get beat up a little bit, and just have it, while I'm polishing, just, crank it up and shake the walls a bit. That sometimes that's fun to me. But I do like I'm not a headphone music listener at all, ever. Like I don't need to listen to music when I'm working out or running or anything like that, which is weird. But like if I'm sitting on the couch, I need to be like doing 2 or 3 things. Otherwise I'll start worrying about I'm going to die or something like that. And start having some panic meltdowns. So, yeah. But that curse. So I get this often because I get how I come across, to certain people, to the vast majority of probably because I use the wrong language. I call regular people, I don't come across very well. But then the people that get it really get it, really get it. And so 100%. The sharing of things, sharing of concepts in a very matter of fact, very say what is so kind of idea is also what helps keep me from, like, if I had 2 million people following, it'd be too much. It'd just be too much for me to handle. And so the decision to be purely authentic, be just me, not turn on the charm, not kind of water it down a little bit to be more appealing to everybody, and say what is so and just be me is what creates lots of time for me, because the customers that I have, in order to get to buy something, they have to get through a 45-minute video of me being very matter of fact, being very To the wrong person, it comes across as narcissistic and condescending and arrogant and all of that. But the key to the whole Obsessed Garage experiment was the humbling.
Mm-hmm.
The humbling in 2014 that I'm really not that good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really not. I don't have a 8-pack anymore. I'm not. You know, I'm freaking chubby and old, and you know, I'm really not all that. That has really changed my whole life and changed the whole dynamic, and it's freed up a lot of time for me by just being me all the time and just doing the things that I love to do all the time, and then figuring out when there is something that I don't love to do, how to create leverage, how to bring somebody into my life, invite them in, and then let them use their talent, being humble enough to know that, like, I don't know if you've seen them, like I hired my good buddy Mike. Mike can build anything. So Mike, why would I push Mike out of the way to, like, you know, to fix the drywall and wire, do some, you know, some sophisticated electrical work? Why would I push him out of the way? And so he provides me leverage. And then Bryce takes care of the website. And why would I push Bryce out of the way when he can code and write all the stuff? Why would I take photos of the stuff or video when Michael Waba can take a much better video than I could? And so that's been the big discovery of my life, this humbling of, really, I'm not all that. Because I wouldn't even let my assistant open an account for me when I was at Merrill Lynch because she'd screw it up, I thought. And so this has afforded me like endless amounts of time by inviting other people to do things. Because prior to this, if I invited you, I would never like invite you to help me move. Mm-hmm. I'd help you because I'm really good at organizing that kind of stuff. And I love that, you know, love making fun of you and saying your freaking stuff is disorganized. And I love coming in and being a help to that. But I wouldn't want you to help me move because then I'd owe you something. And so that was the big epiphany of discovering time, was the humbling, and then then this discovery that, man, you validate others when you include them in things, when you invite them to do things. You know, like when you invited Chip Foose to do it, you're probably thinking, man, I don't know if I should. When you invite somebody, you know, you're validating him. Now, granted, someone like him can only say yes to so many things. Right. But there's a humbling that needs to happen in order to invite others into your life to help provide leverage to create some greater 100%. Good, if you will.
Yeah, I can only wish that in a few years I have the bankroll, so then I could, because I know you have the bandwidth. You've already told me that you could then become my life coach. Because you were like,
you're an artist. See, you're much more an artist than an engineer, and
but
so
you have all the smarts that I don't have. I feel like you learned a lot along the way that has the fucking experience that I'm always trying to figure out how I can take me, who, like, I do all my own sales, I do all my own installs, I do all my own video, I take all my own pictures, I do everything for myself, right? And I know that right now you're just boiling, being like, you can't do that.
No, I get it. I totally understand. Part of that is your I would guess, you know, knowing you a little bit, that you probably don't think that anybody else could do it as good as you.
Exactly.
Right.
100%.
So there's a bit of that.
100%.
And then there's a bit of frustration that even if you found somebody as good as you, they're not going to do it the way you wanted to do it.
100%.
And so it's kind of hard to give it up. Right. Which is a bunch of freaking nonsense.
We had that conversation probably 5 years ago, Matt, about if you're going to grow, and you have Aaron now. That's a step in the right direction.
Like, I have a guy who, at least now, I've figured out a way to mini scale. So I have a guy that will take apart the car, do all the basic parts of the installation, do the speakers, do the sound treatment, get it ready for me to do the cosmetics and then the tune, right? So when he's stripping down the car and getting everything ready, I'm doing the cosmetics and tuning the prior car. And then when he's done, I'm doing the cosmetics and the tuning of the next car. So we figured out a way to scale a little bit. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, the way that I take pictures, the way that I do video, the way that I do anything, I take so much pride in everything that I do that I feel like nobody else is going to be able to fill that void. Sales, perfect. I feel like nobody can talk to a client the way that I talk to a client because I have more passion than that salesman. And there's no salesman that's going to be able to talk to a client and get them as excited to do something as I would. So that's
Why
where,
don't you take like a Monday and Tuesday off, which you don't have, fly down here to Florida, and I'll show you how to do all this, and I'll show you all of these people that now one of the smart things I'm hearing that you did there is that you don't want to create a bunch of mini yous. You don't want people threading it, right? You don't want them to know your customers. So the person that's dealing with the customers shouldn't know how to do the install. Like, you don't want to create a bunch of potential competitors, where eventually they're going to say, well, shoot, this guy's making all the money and I'm not. And so I'm going to go steal it. But what I started with in the beginning is like, what is the thing that I should be doing the least of? And it was shipping. Right. And so I hired my parents and I got them on the cheap, right? Because they were doing it on the part time. And then, I knew that they wouldn't screw it up and I knew they would do it. Eventually, I had a really hard time because my dad wasn't all that great with printing out the invoices and all that stuff. So I had to spend a little time fighting through that. And then at some point, my mom totally revamps how everything's packaged and put together. And like, I have nothing to do with that. You eventually get to the point to where I don't really know how to do anything. I don't edit a video, but every single one of these little things every day, I had to take time with somebody to then have it not take any more time ever again. And if you articulate and you make agreements with people, and if you share your vision with them, they'll surprise you more than you could possibly imagine. So as you might imagine, I am the biggest control freak in the history of the universe, right? I'm a psycho when it comes to that. But once you start to let these things go, then it becomes a game for you. You start to become like, man, what else can I get rid of? What else could I not do that I think I'm better than anybody else at? Like, I believe, and I get in trouble with it all the time, I'm better at doing the laundry than my wife is. 100%. Guaranteed. She's terrible at it. I'm freaking awesome at it. And yet I had to give that up. And now what I'm trying to convince her to do is we need to hire a laundry specialist because you suck at it. My laundry's never done. And so I need to hire somebody that's a laundry specialist. Then I start thinking, well, how could I provide leverage in order to how could I pay for that? Or I was thinking of the other day is that like we have to do like the school is moving further away. So I start thinking, well, why don't I buy a Mercedes, one of those vans, one of those like vans, real nice vans, and then I hire a driver, and then I get like 10 parents together because we don't have a school bus system for our school. And why don't I figure out a way to provide some leverage, and that way I don't ever have to drive them to school and never have to do that. So just thinking about ways, it starts to get fun. So remember, I wouldn't let my assistant open an account.
Yeah.
And then it starts with you have your guy doing the tear parts, but then at some point you might not even do the fabrication.
Yeah.
And you will love and smile.
It's funny because
smile.
There's people in our industry probably that you don't know. One person that sticks out to me is Tom Miller. He's become such a good, he'll rival Chip Foose in drawing into concept, interiors, and art. And then he's been able to kind of like migrate out of his fabrication position, and then he can give a rendering to the guys that work below him. For me, I'm not the same fucking artistic drawer, right? Most of the stuff that I come up with in what I do is, I would say 50% concept. I know the equipment has to go here. I know it could only fit here. And then the rest of it is puzzle piecing to finish it off together, right? Layers on layers to finish everything to make it look complete. So for me, when it comes to the fabrication side of things, to have somebody else get into my mindset, I feel like that's just the hardest thing to try and figure out how to get to that finish line with somebody else being able to do the work.
You probably never will, just like with me, and like I'm probably never going to find somebody to shop for products like I do. That when it comes down to it, that's the secret sauce of Obsessed Garage is my ability to trust my gut, find the product, and then even know what products to look for. Like looking for just weird crap that most people don't care about. Like I've been chasing an amazing oil catch can, the thing that catches the oil underneath the lid. Yeah. I found this company, Samson, but I found them by jogging the halls at the Apex show at the other side of SEMA that nobody goes to before they even opened. And so probably is never going to be able with somebody that's going to do that to the level that I can do it. But if I had like 2 or 3 people that were jogging the aisles of Apex and they knew, they were kind of looking for stuff, they might get us like 95% of the way there someday.
You could find the best person that gets you closest to what you're thinking.
Yeah. And so I think there's a way to eventually continue to promote yourself as you start to build an organization. And then, most people like yourselves that are like solopreneurs and you add a couple of employees, you kind of avoid it because there's a lot of baggage that comes with all the humans and the expectations that they have on me. And there's a lot of stuff like I'd rather not do that. I just want to go shopping for stuff, right? You just want to go and you build something. And so then you transition a bit. But I think the pros and cons of either side of you doing everything and having all that weight versus including others and maybe picking up some of their baggage. It's like you have a little carry-on versus a freaking giant dump truck filled with stuff when you're the solo guy, right? So, yeah, you don't like that, the baggage that people bring because it's their baggage. But I'm telling you, man, if you can start to, work toward that life, we will never have this conversation about not having enough time.
I'll tell you 100% that if you're serious about that offer, I might try and actually figure out how to make that happen. Even though that's something that I would generally never do.
I think what we should probably do is I should probably introduce you to my coach, my business coach, because he can coach anywhere in the world. And you take the My Business course, and it completely changed my life. It's about the relationship side of things. You don't have a problem with business. You don't have a problem with sales.
Right,
you don't have a problem with customers. You and I, we have a problem with other people. Yeah. Right? People that don't share the same passion. Your customers share the same passion.
100%. You're
surrounding yourself with people that are just like you. Yeah. And so his tagline is, business is an excuse to be in relationship. That you can have this building with computers and everything set up, but without the relationships of the humans in it, you don't have a business. You've got nothing. And so these concepts of, figuring out where you're going wrong, and figuring out where your blind spots are and being coachable has been the biggest, change in my life. Because shoot, I'd still be at frickin' Merrill Lynch selling mutual funds, if it were up to me. But because I listened to others, have had, I'm sure you've had some great mentors as well in the industry that have set a really great model for you, being open to, the evolution of I think leverage. Leverage is a mean word to use, but it's really including others, to include their talent and their skill set, and to add something to it. Because the CEO of Ford doesn't make the frickin' Ford. He probably doesn't even know how it's made, but he's in charge of the whole thing. Eventually, you want to become the CEO of what it is you do, and you're delivering on the product. Because it would be such a shame for you to just, you have a herniated disc and you can't do what you're doing anymore. It'd be such a shame for your talent to just disappear like that. It's the conversation I have with detailers all the time about your first, like day one, you should be thinking about how you're never going to do this again.
Yeah.
I don't care how much you love it. I don't care how much you're polishing, how good you are at polishing. You should figure out so that you don't have to do it ever again. That's the whole thing of the Seth's Garage, why I didn't call it Matt Moreman, because, Matt Moreman's garage, what happens if Matt Moreman's not here? I wouldn't, it would be nice if it lived beyond, and but it takes a long time to build a brand that's outside of you. And it takes a lot of humbling and believing that, maybe I'm not the best at laundry. Maybe I'm just, maybe I'm really not very good at it at all.
It's funny because I relate to everything that you're saying, is because like my YouTube channel, my Instagram, I feel like I've built all the traction off of my actual name over my business name. So I've never migrated over to the business name. It's still been under my actual name. So my YouTube channel is under my actual name. Same thing with my Instagram.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I make that transition, it becomes, am I losing people because I've now migrated to something different?
Maybe you don't need to do that, but maybe you just need somebody to help you do it. And always remember, another really strong piece of advice I got was when you pay someone's salary, we always think of it as, I'm going to pay them $50,000 a year. No, you only got to pay them 1 month, and then I got to pay them month 2, and I got to pay them month 3. So can I come up with 1 month?
Mm-hmm.
And then can I invest enough energy and time in that person to make sure that they are providing enough value to do 3 times what they cost in month 1, and then month 2, and then month 3. So you take it 1 month at a time. Not, I'm going to pay this person $80,000 a year. I got to pay him $80,000 tomorrow. Of course, I don't have the $80,000 right now, but I have $4,000. And so, I'm probably going to blow $4,000 on some exhaust that I don't need for something stupid that I don't, shouldn't have. So maybe I just forego that. I bring some human in, and then I can buy $54,000 exhaust because that person just freed up all this time and generated all this money, all this income. But it's, now I'm stuck with that person. Now I'm responsible for that person. Now when they're not happy, I'm not happy. So you have to then sort of figure out how to manage that kind of stuff. That's been the biggest epiphany of my life. And it all came back to that goofy therapist who said, you need to let some people in. And I've been burned 100 times, maybe 1,000 times I let everybody in. The very first subscribers on YouTube are the weirdest weirdos. And I invited them all. They were all at my house. I invited all these people to my house. They all ended up getting together, banding together, and they all hated me. And they gathered some other people that eventually came back and said, hey, we kind of got lumped in this group of hating you for some reason. These are like people that like at my dinner table. Next thing I know, a year later, they're like banding together to create some, not other Obsessed Garage thing. So there are some, tons of mistakes along the way. So don't let me trick you into saying that this is freaking easy, because it's been hard as crap. You're seeing, now I'm 7 years into having a coach, and then involving others and including people into, I guess 8 years now, 2014, into being humbled enough to realize that I'm really not all that good at anything, and that I can probably find somebody better at all these things. But the key metric is not one person at Obsessed Garage, all 30 of them. The only person that can put it together is me. So we've had a couple people leave here recently, and we don't skip a beat because that person wasn't like the everything. And that person had built a platform to train the next person. So when the next person comes in, they just go. But that takes some forethought. And so that's where you'll make your transition to doing. When I still make videos every single day. So I'm still building the box. I'm still tuning the systems. I'm still doing that per se, my proverbial tuning the system. But all of everything else, I don't pay a bill. I don't do any marketing. I don't deal with the website. I don't take pictures. I don't create the product. I don't have to deal with HR questions. I don't do anything. That's taken a long way. Just every day, give up something. I don't even know how to pack the box. Like a couple Black Fridays ago, I was trying to help. They're like, get out of here. You're screwing it up. You're all wrong. I taught them how to pack the box. I created the whole darn thing, and I don't even know how to do it anymore.
Now they've evolved it to something even more efficient.
Right. So Matt, maybe we get with with my business coach, and I'll introduce you. He'll change your life.
Hey, I'm Gary, by the way.
Nice to meet you, Gary. Where are you? Are you in Virginia too?
I'm in California.
Okay, gotcha. So how did you guys get together? Just through the industry, knowing each other?
Yeah. So Matt and I know each other because we both. Actually, I think the first time we met in person, we were teamed together on a build-off challenge at Mobile Solutions. Mobile Solutions is a business that's owned by a friend of ours that supplies, like what you do for a garage, he does for fabricators.
He puts together all the templates and router bits and router lifts and puts it all together in one spot where any fabricator or shop could purchase this equipment. Literally the same fucking concept, but with fabrication.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have that resource,
Yeah. And he does trainings. And so I think the first time we actually met was we got paired on a build-off team during a class. We're like instructors, and then it was 3 sets of instructors that were like building off in the middle of the class for everybody to watch, and competition and training all in the same thing. And we haven't
Gary
looked back.
and I vibed well because we're both the type of people where we like to see what happens. Like, we're not afraid to fail. We like to push the limit and see, okay, what's going to happen? I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but I'm going to learn from the experience, right? Versus the people who like to be stuck in the predictable nature where they're like, I know what the outcome's going to be, and I'm perfect with that. I like the predictableness. Gary and I are the complete opposite, where we'll push the limit and we'll like to try something extreme. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we'll probably figure out a way that it does work.
Yep. That's the secret, man. That's the secret formula, I think, to success in life, is that ability to be willing to ship it, be willing to send it, see what happens.
Yeah.
But have enough. Yeah. You still need to be organized, meticulous, artistic, have all those 100%. Good traits. Also have a bit of impulsiveness that you can then try some things out.
I think also that combination of just building upon, you've pushed it in the past and not failed. You found a way to persevere, and that gives you the confidence to keep pushing on the next one. And also the ability that if something does fail, that you can in a split second throw it in the trash and just get right back to the next crazy idea that you have and not let it affect you.
Because I've met many of the people that do what you do over the years, and a lot of them are perfectionists and they just get stuck. They can't. Yeah. They end up doing the same thing over and over again, or they just screw around. I mean, how many guys, and this is probably why you guys have been successful, is that how many guys in car, in the car world of the install side of things, procrastinate, and have to pull 6 all-nighters to get it done at the end, right? That's why I hate it so much. Like, you guys have done nothing all day for like 7 days straight, and now you have to stay up for 3 days straight. And they do it over, and they're so unhealthy because then they have to like drink Red Bulls nonstop. And I hated that about the industry. It's so frustrating.
Really quickly on Gary, I heard you mention the Alpine F1 status early in the podcast. So Gary worked for Alpine for a long time, right after
not a long
a decent amount of time after the F1 status kind of came into the business. Yeah. And all the concept cars that you saw at CES and SEMA, Gary ended up taking upon that challenge with Alpine. You had Steve Brown and Chris Yotto in the early days, and then Gary joined the team in the time in which
it's like 05, 06, just after the F1. So Mike Vu, who now works for Rivian, actually, Mike Vu and Steve had built the X5 for the relaunch of F1 in I think that was about 05. Then I came on in 06-ish, and did the Sinister 6 and the RLS and the boat.
Original F1 was like early 90s, right? Early mid 90s.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I had sourced one of those for a system that I had in my 99 Civic. I had the original Alpine F1 head unit. Nice. It wasn't called F1, but it was like the equivalent of what was F1 at the time. It was the 6-button button. Yeah.
So that's Gary's background. So he's done some pretty cool builds.
Then jogged around into some other stuff, and now we do about 50% car audio and 50% just kind of manufacturing stuff. Some of that is display work.
And he's in Orange, California.
Some of it is prototyping. Yeah, I'm like 10 minutes south of Disneyland.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
So if you ever come this way.
Yeah, I was out there. McGuire's is out your way.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty close. So I have buddies at McGuire's that I've been out there to visit. And then Projet is also there. Projet is a blender of a lot of detailing chemicals. So I buy some stuff from Projet. Well, I mean, there's a boatload of everything's in Southern California, it seems.
I know, right?
To do with cars and detailing.
Anytime Gary needs anything, he's like, hey, I need to get this vinyl, this whatever. Or Amazon, whatever it is. Yeah. It's either next door and like literally Chip Foose's upholstery guy is next door in the building next to Gary.
Like literally the other side of the wall. But
so he is so spoiled with everything, and I have to wait all this time to get anything that I need in Delaware, which most people don't even recognize as a state in the United States.
Yeah, but you don't pay sales tax, so that's nice.
And that is the key to a lot of clients shipping their cars from all over the place, because again, if a guy from California, right, is spending 50 grand on an audio system. The fact that they don't have to spend sales tax, that's free shipping to Delaware.
Yeah.
Yeah, it pays for the shipping.
So I have a 992 GT3 Touring. I have a pretty sick, like 1,000-mile Interlagos Blue E92 M3. The single hump manual car. I have a Rivian coming. I have a Gen 2 Raptor, and I'm thinking probably I'd like to get the 718 GT4 RS. Which of those cars should I do a system in, and what should I do?
It's a good question.
First answer is you should put a system in all of them, of course. That's a good question. I would say that is your goal for the system something to just get out on the road and drive and enjoy music in, or is it because you feel like you should, or are you really going to use it?
Pure function. No, I don't care. I like the OE look as much as possible, so I'm not looking to show. I do not like, and I know you guys use it all, I do not like Focal Utopia. It's too bright for me. Too thin, too bright.
We knocked the Focal right out of those. It's really easy with the DSP now. It's just like tuning an ECU on a car. Mm-hmm. That's like saying, hey, that polish leaves swirl marks.
I just can't. There's something about Focal in general.
Matt, I'm telling you right now.
It's because you haven't heard them done right.
Right now. If I sat you in,
we've heard it too.
Sat you in a car with Utopia M, right, done correctly.
Yep.
Because again, however you heard it tuned is completely irrelevant to whatever I'm talking about. Much like the detail game, somebody using a polisher, using this wax, like it's irrelevant unless it's done correctly. So you hearing it too bright means the fucking installer didn't know what he was doing with the DSP and you perceived it too bright.
Right. And the combination there is that they are unforgiving speakers. And if they are not dialed in correctly, you will know that they are not correct. But when done correctly, they have a level of detail that is very hard to match. And if you think back to, I think I heard you mention Dyne Audio at some point. Yep. If you think of if you picture sound in your brain, and you've obviously had experience with this stuff, if you picture the sound of a Dyne or a Morel that has that laid back sound, and in your mind you picture a Focal tweeter as being bright and harsh, it's so much easier for me to make that Focal to basically dull it down, right, and pull some of that out of it. But you could never put that Focal brightness into that Dyne.
Right.
And you could never put that, and it's what you're hearing is detail, right? You're hearing that hard dome tweeter, and you have to be careful with it. You don't take a kid and have him take his first swings off a Nolan Ryan fastball. So
is it that Utopia M is invested because they've invested more than anybody else, so that the driver tech, like, it's just better? Like, because if I love the sound signature, like just the out of the box sound signature of a Dyne Audio, wouldn't I be better off you working your magic on a Dyne Audio than a speaker that I don't like out of the box?
It's a two-way combination. So it's the tune and the car. When you're listening to music in a car, you're listening to a lot of reflections. Right. You're listening in an environment that's not not
right. Yeah.
And a ton of comb filtering. Basically, you have a bunch of frequencies that are in phase and then out of phase, and in phase and out of phase. And that's why it's very difficult to get a car to sound like a good set of bookshelves, right? Like you take the environment out of the equation and everything becomes really simple. So in a car, it's about getting those levels right, and that's totally dependent on how much reflected energy you actually have and where that speaker placement is, and then in relationship to the mid-range driver. And if you're using, if you're using a two-way versus a three-way, there's a lot that goes in there to really give it that sound signature. So the speakers themselves, when Matt and I look at it, the speakers are the least important part of all of it.
Sure.
I know nobody wants to hear that, right? But in the same way that I'm gonna put it right into your world, you could give a great detailer product from Pep Boys, and he's gonna do a better job than I am with your best stuff.
Sure. Yep. Makes sense.
100%.
Right? And it's the golfer, it's the
Right.
swing, it's not the
Right.
club, it's not the ball. But no golfer wants to use a shitty club or a shitty ball.
All right, so let's do my E92. That's the car I'd be most likely to do.
I just sold my E92 last year.
So what would we do? No, so knowing this is a $150,000 E92, probably one of the best in the world, and I'm about to molest it by tearing it apart. So I don't want to be cutting stuff, chopping things apart, and fiberglassing. So, but I want great. What would we do there, and what would it cost?
You taking it, Matt? Or is this a real life, or is this or are we just having fun playing?
I'll skip it up to you right now. I'm thinking about this. Like, I would love to have a great audio system in that car. I would love that.
It's a good car for audio. It really is. So it's tweeter in the pillar, or not in the pillar, in the sail panel, and then the 3.5-4 inch driver in the top of the door, and then the under seats. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good speaker options for Matty. I know Matty leans towards the Focal. He's going right to the Utopias. Don't even play around.
I mean, it's one of those things that, like I said, once you understand what works, you use all the time, and that's like your business model. You've tried everything else. Obviously, everything has to fit in a certain budget. Like if you're a client coming to me, we always establish a budget. And then for me, I'm trying to get the best return on your investment on that budget. So I'm utilizing all of the different equipment available at certain price points and picking, same concept that you do, the best equipment that's going to work for that price point based on all the things that I've used over the years and understand what provides the best value. And after COVID, we've had a ton of manufacturers reprice their equipment. What I've projected pre-COVID isn't the same value as it is post-COVID. So like everything shifts based on budget of what you're going to get for X amount of dollars.
So let me pose this to you. My customer now, friend John, as he built a garage, based on our recommendations, right? So he said, look, I'll let you video this if you'll do it, and we'll just do what we need to do. There was no number, but we'll just do what we need to do, not just waste money, right? So we didn't just waste money, but he basically just gave me his Amex, and we just charged whatever we needed to charge to do what needed to be done.
Exactly.
So in an E92 M3, thinking of it that way, not let's just tear the car apart and rebuild, just do stupid stuff. Let's do what we need to do to make it great. What does that look like?
Right, because most of my clients are just like what you're saying, where the things that I'm thinking about in my head when designing a system is, okay, it needs to be serviceable. It needs to be functional, right? There's still going to be a daily driver. We're not tearing up the dash and putting speakers in dramatically different locations to make it that advantageous to get the quality. I'm doing it in a practical sense, right? So obviously the underseat woofers, in my opinion, those woofers for me would sound better if I were to build door pods and have a traditional speaker in a door or a speaker in a kick panel other than under the seat, because there's certain frequencies that are going to be obstructed that are important by it being under the seat. I mean, it's just fact. And same thing with the mid-range speaker, right? So if you're sitting there in your driver's seat driving, when you're in the driving position, you're going to be obstructing a lot of that mid-range. So that mid-range is better suited in a pillar unobstructed by a person, which is constantly moving, where the image is going to perhaps shift depending on how much you're moving. There's a lot of things that when I break down the sales process with clients, we try and figure out the happy medium, their budget, their expectations, and their goals of the actual audio system. So in a BMW, it's a little bit, for me, more challenging than most cars based on how the factory constructs that system. Can you still get a great sounding car with the factory locations? Absolutely. Is Utopia M going to be your best friend in that situation? Absolutely, because the off-axis response of those speakers are going to be much greater than a lot of other speakers on the market, right? Because they actually make those speakers to have a great off-axis response, which is what you would have in those factory locations.
I'm really fighting this. Like, I just don't believe that I could like Focal Utopia. I just don't think I could.
1,000%.
So
I
struggling
promise
here.
you, if you sat in a car that I did Focal Utopia M in,
I'm just afraid that
you would have an
feel
out-of-body experience. And listen, I know how prideful you are. I know how passionate you are. You know what you know. At the same time, I know how much I know. And I know that there's no fucking way, because the reference that I have is pretty great when it comes to audio. There's no way you would sit in one of these cars and not look over at me and be like, this is probably the fucking greatest experience I've ever had sitting in a car.
All right, so we're dancing around. How much is this going to cost me to do this?
So the big question, right, becomes if you're willing to do the fabrication up front and deal with a modified A-pillar with speakers up there versus using factory locations. And that decision alone is way more important than the drivers or the
100%.
amplifiers that we pick. That's the question that needs to be answered. If you want the car to look stock, there's a certain level you can get to.
Keep in mind, you can still make it look
And
stock
there's-
by doing A-pillars. Like, you've seen the stuff I've posted. Like, you can take the same DNA and incorporate it into the A-pillars. I've done a few BMWs where I use the same exact pattern of mesh that they use in the grill pattern in the A-pillar. So sitting in the car, you have no idea.
In fact, you could probably even get the factory grill for the mid to work.
And is it reversible?
Yeah, you would just buy new A-pillars from the factory and call it a day. Put everything back to factory.
Yeah, just keep the ones I have, and then and buy
Order
new
a
ones.
fresh set.
Yeah, order ones for you to do. So you're doing, what's the Utopia tweeter? Is it a 1-inch?
They're
The
oblong.
only downside is that
They're
it's
weird.
it's an oblong shape.
Okay, yeah.
In the factory sail panels, it takes some modification. You kind of have to deconstruct the inside of that sail panel, remold it for the Utopia speaker. But I've done plenty in the factory sail panel.
So you're doing an 8-inch low frequency driver in the door, none in the trunk,
Under the seat, in the case of what you have, without modification.
and no enclosure in the trunk.
So yeah, you would definitely have some sort of subwoofer in the trunk.
Okay.
Hey, I have a fiberglass enclosure for, I think, a single 12 that goes in the passenger side rear. Fits right in. That I got for my E92 that I sold before I put a system in it. Just saying. That's the easy way out. You could definitely add more bass than that, but it does load well in that rear corner.
But like I said, everything is a balance, right? So like if you're doing something in the trunk, it's how do we create the most bass while not having the resonance build up in the trunk, right? How do we not have the trunk rattle? How do we not have panels rattle? So airflow becomes a very big key in that, and having some sort of a pass through, which a lot of times at ski hole, you can have that down and then build some sort of a grill that looks OEM into that area, so air can then move from the trunk into the cab without having that resonance built up in the trunk.
So you have tweeter mid range in the up of the dash, like I see you doing Teslas, right? That are molded there, right? And then you have like 8-inch mid range driver in the door, or no?
Mid bass under the seat in the factory location. That would be without the modification.
Yeah, the door could be rebuilt, or the kick panel could be done for the mid bass, which is a better location. But again, you're fighting the
But it also comes
reversibility
to return
and-
on your investment, right? How much money am I spending to rebuild the lower part of the door versus having the factory underseat location? You know, what is the differential in that, and is it worth it? Right. That's like your whole business model. Is it worth it based on your experience? That's what clients are asking me. Is it worth it? Like, I haven't rebuilt very many BMW lower doors. I can still make it sound unbelievable with the factory location. But at the same time, once we start climbing that ladder and trying to figure out the weak points of how the system is developed, that's going to be a weak point. So at what point are we going to overcome that hurdle to not have that be a weak point.
There becomes a point where we're trading off the elements of sound quality, which we will say are tonality, stage width, stage depth, detail, and volume. So the underseat speaker location does well up to a certain volume. Then it's just creating, it's basically an infinite baffle setup that runs throughout the inner skeleton of the car. And you just get to a point and there's things that start to rattle. The seatbelt tensioner starts to rattle. There's plastic parts that will start to resonate. And then there's a certain amount of time, and we'll just remember time is money. There's a certain amount of time that you spend chasing those things down, some of which you can fix, some of them that you can't. But that will be the limiting factor of that underseat. We lose just a hair on detail. We lose a hair on volume compared to a lot of work to change that speaker location. That's the balancing act there, the trade-off. Again, everything is a trade-off.
Keep in mind, Matt, when you're sitting in your driver's seat, right, and you're sitting there, you're looking straight, and your eyes are shut, and you're listening to whatever song you're listening to, which we'll get to at the end, because we always ask people, what song are you playing when you're trying to evaluate an audio system. But when you're sitting there and you're listening to everything, the subwoofer that's in the back should sound like it's playing from the center of the hood, much like where the kick drum would be and the drummer would be, or the bass guitar or whatever. And then when you're listening to everything, you should have a wide stage, right? So like mirror to mirror, if better, past the mirrors, the side mirrors. And all of that detail should be at a very exclusive spot on the dashboard, right? So if you're listening to Pink Floyd Money and you're listening to the middle of the song, right? So the breakdown of everything happening at once, and there's so many things happening, everything should have its own place and time on the dashboard. Nothing should overlap. Not one thing should overlap on each other, which that's what most people are used to, like hearing everything on top of each other. Everything should have its own place and time, where if your eyes are shut and you're looking straight, everything you're listening to is at a different spot on your dashboard that has an amazing width and then has a great depth. And the sub that you know is in the back sounds like it's coming from the hood, right?
Sure.
And when you get into those mid bass underneath the seats, the problem you start generating when you're trying to have a ton of mid bass is like it'll start rattling the seatbelt tensioner. And the second you hear that seatbelt tensioner rattle, you're locating it to the location of the speaker, and it ruins the sound stage. So that's what we start talking about, like diminishing returns and not having it be as great as it could be when it's in a kick panel, where it's like in the strongest part of the car, the most reinforced part of the car. You're not getting that, and resonance. Also in
the best loading location, just like corner loading a subwoofer in your house. Sure. Yep. You're loading it in that corner, and it's as good as you're going to get.
It's the same concept. So it comes down to how obsessed, right? I keep using this term because it's adequate for this podcast. How obsessed are you with perfect sound quality? Do you want it to be perfect based on how the car? Because every car is going to have its limiting expectations, right? I can't make your BMW sound like an open SUV where there is no trunk and that air is just moving throughout the cab, right? I can't do it. But how perfect do you want it to sound for the car that you're in? Because at the end of the day, when you go to a movie theater, whatever equipment they install in there, they're tuning the equipment for the room, right? And in car audio, much like you said with the Utopia M being bright, that's irrelevant. We're tuning the equipment for the room. So if you're hearing the Utopia M is bright, it means that the person tuning the car didn't take the room into the consideration, right? Because it shouldn't sound bright.
They probably didn't put a microphone in the car. There is one super important question we forgot to start off with, and that is, how much do you care what it sounds like from the passenger seat?
0.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's
that makes our life a lot simpler.
Yeah, 0. Is there rear fill in these? Do you just take the speakers off the rear deck, or do you put something there?
So there's kind of two things that we put kind of at the end of the list of priorities that can still add to the system. And done correctly, the rear fill speakers can make the car sound bigger. It instead of listening to a tiny little set of bookshelves, it sounds bigger, like a set of, outdoor monitors, right? And the rear speakers can add to that. The other thing that can be done in that car is there's a factory center channel location. So you can add a center to it, which would be way more important if you cared how it sounded in both seats. Just because of the way the delays are set up in a 2-seat car versus a 1-seat, that center channel really helps. I would put both of those way down on the list of if we're trying to stay at a certain price point. And the reason being is that to add those rears in, we need 2 more channels of DSP and we need 2 more channels of amplification plus the speakers. And that's if we do a coax speaker. If we go to a higher end 2-way in the rear, now we need 4 channels in the rear of DSP and 4 channels of amplification. And if you look at it real quick, that we're going to have 6 speakers in the front of the car and a woofer, that's an 8-channel DSP, readily available, lots of options. And that 8-channel DSP chip is common. There's not a whole lot of 10-channel DSPs. We're starting to get some 12 channels. There's some 16 channels. But if we have to start getting into having multiple DSPs, it really starts to push up the labor hours as far as tuning and just more complicated systems.
So what do you do about head unit processor?
So factory head unit almost on every modern day car, right? There's a lot of, like you said, BMW. So there's Nav TV, there's Mobridge. There's a lot of companies that make factory amplifier interfaces. So that factory amp comes out, the most network connects directly into this new, I would just say, module, right? And then that gives you analog or digital output to your DSP. That's going to give you a perfect 20 to 20K signal that doesn't have the crossover points or any of the crap that the factory does. And it's essentially turning your factory radio into an aftermarket radio. And you even have the ability to control the chime volume, the parking distance control volume, all of that stuff in BMWs.
And then I just connect to that with my phone, like through MQA or whatever.
Yeah,
if
so
I had some FLA.
Obviously, you could connect to the factory radio and have that as a preset, right? So everything that the factory does, your new audio system can do. So you lose nothing in functionality. And then obviously there is a step above that to where you could then connect your aptX HD capable phone to the processor with a Bluetooth chip while simultaneously being connected to your BMW, right? So you're connected to 2 Bluetooth sources at the same time. You have your phone sending the information of what you're listening to your factory radio. So you see you're playing Bruno Mars 24 Karat Magic on your radio, and you can hit track forward, track back, all that kind of stuff, just like you can from the factory. But that audio, much like if you connect to stuff at home, you could then say, I want to direct the audio to the DSP chip. So now you're skipping the factory audio system. You're connected to the DSP chip that is aptX HD capable, and now you're getting a better bandwidth communication to that Bluetooth module. But you're not losing any functionality other than using the steering wheel control volume in that aspect. You would have to use the DSP controller to control the volume because obviously the volume is now going through something other than the factory DSP. And then to take a step above that, you could do Tidal, anything on your phone. And then a step above that, a step above that would be using like a legitimate player that is made to play the best audio possible, right? Which would be like an Astel and Kern that would have better DACs built in that would then give you better separation, width, depth, all this stuff that we preached talking to you 20 minutes ago on the audio, right? So there's
which of course no one does. I'm not going to do that.
Right. Most people won't do that, right? But if I A, B, C compare, so I A, the factory radio, B, Bluetooth on your phone, C, the Sastel and Kern playing analog out, there'd be no, like, you could put a grandmother in the car who doesn't give two fucks about audio, and she would be like, oh my God, like this, she could tell the difference, right? You don't have to be an audiophile. You don't have to be trained. You don't have to be anything. You would understand the width is wider, the depth is deeper, and the separation is a lot more prevalent on something like that.
So you can see my affinity here with my next question. I'm going to tell myself here, I love the gear. What's the amplifier? Are we Audison? Are we Moscone? Are we, what are we doing here?
Well, most
Genesis.
of those people make great stuff, right? So, you know, I can only speak to what I carry. Gary can only speak to what he carries. I believe in the brands that I've had, much like your tweeter days, you know, you probably sold. And it's funny too, because like when we break down sales, the greatest salespeople believe in the product, right? Period. If salespeople who didn't sell very much could only believe in the best product, they'd be the best fucking salespeople in that product, right? Because at the end of the day, when you talk and you exude the passion for the products that you believe in, that you know work, there's nobody on the planet that isn't going to buy that product. You could come in with a $300 budget and leave with a $3,000 amp based on you articulating why that's better, right? That's like your whole business model, right? You've done the research to articulate to people why to not buy A through X. And then you're telling people to buy everything through Z based on your experience and your trial and tribulations and everything that you've experienced in the industry.
So you're not tell me what I'm buying. I want to know what I'm buying.
So if it's pillars and we'll just say
pillars under
either
rear fill,
Utopia M's,
well, we
or
might all have different
Morel.
answers because, like I said, we all sell different stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, there is a time when diminishing returns happen, right? So, you know, my next two jobs, like I'm doing a ZL1 Callaway Camaro now, where I'm doing all Brax amplifiers and Brax DSP, Brax speakers. And
that Brax DSP is how much?
$7,000 for the DSP.
$7,000
for each amplifier. We're using 3 of them. And then we have all the Brax speakers. So at the end of the day, this install is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like $80K, right? And then after that, we're doing 2 cars from Scottsdale, Arizona, which it's the same client, but I was smart. Matt, you're going to enjoy this because from a sales perspective, like we just got back from an event called MasterTech Expo, where a bunch of us fabricators and salespeople, we get together at this event and they kind of show all the techniques for sales, for fabrication, for all sorts of stuff. And that's where we did the podcast with Chip. And essentially one car is going to get all one brand, the highest end. One other car of his is going to get all the other highest brand. So there's 2 separate brands. He's getting the best of both. And at the next year's MasterTech Expo, I can have one car in one booth and one car in the other booth. Because like
what's
I said,
the other
he's
brand?
right,
We'll be
he's
able
right
to
down
hear
the
the
street.
difference.
So the other brand is going to be Focal, Utopia, and Moscone, which I typically use all the time. Right. So for me, the value that I see is like after the Focal Moscone combination, which I still feel is the best combination. And again, this is a non-sponsored podcast, right? So nobody pays us to do this podcast, which you'd probably look down on. We don't get any money from this podcast.
No, I don't get paid by anybody either.
So, and the reason we do that is so we can stay organic and say what's on our mind. But for me, that's the best combination of equipment. Anytime you go above that, you're paying a lot to receive not a lot in return. So this Camaro ZL1, I will say, organically, is going to be the first time I'm using all Brax, which is a German company, Audiotech Fischer. It's like the Ferrari of audio equipment from this company.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the first time I've used it, so I don't have a say in where that measures up. But I will say the Focal Mosconi combination is very special. And I've listened to so many cars at industry events, and Gary and I joke about this all the time. Like, I don't like sitting in cars at industry events just because you can tell what's on my mind, right? So I can't bullshit. I can't be like, oh, that sounded great if it didn't sound great. So I generally don't listen to cars at events, because if it doesn't fit my expectations, then you're going to know. For me, that combination of equipment is pretty much the echelon of anything that I've ever listened to, based on how I've tuned it and set it up and all that kind of stuff.
So I do this on my E92. We do under seat, do the pillars. We do skip the center channel. Mm-hmm. We do the rear fill.
Agree.
Do Mosconi Focal combo. Mm-hmm. We have, what would we have? A single 12, dual 10. What do you have in the trunk?
It's weird too, because like we get in these kicks of installers, right? So I've done a lot of dual 10 Utopia M10 subwoofers. So, I mean, probably if you go through my build log of the last couple of things that I've done dual 10s in almost everything that I've done. And Matt, I'm telling you, when you sit down and listen, and I can play the Astel and Kern all day long and play music, and you'd be like, that sounds amazing. But once I play like YouTube Tiny Desk NPR concerts, I put that phone on the center of your dashboard, you're sitting in your driver's seat, and you're listening, and you're seeing in real time the people on your display, on your iPhone, right? On your dashboard in the center of your car, and every instrument is exactly as you perceive it on your phone. It's like a mind-blowing experience, right? So you're seeing the electric guitar to the far right, and there's no deception that it's to your left or in the center. Like, it is exactly where you're hearing it. I feel like you have this connection with what you're listening to that you're like, this is legitimate. And then you hear the kick drum, and the kick drum, you know your subs are way well behind you, but those subs sound like they're coming from beyond the singer, what you can see on the display, you know, on your phone.
So in the trunk area, is it all in the floor? Where's all this stuff? Where are we putting all this stuff?
Yeah, I think you're gonna probably. My guess is Matt's gonna lean towards putting the box and then letting it fire into the ski hole.
Yeah. In that case, yeah. So I've done a few BMWs like that, to where I've done 2 subs in the back up firing, and then I have the ski hole down, an aesthetic pass through, and then obviously things can vent through the rear grills on the top deck.
Yeah, and then amps in the floor probably. You might need to raise the floor just a hair.
Yeah, so like I said, it all depends on your goals, your budget, because like I said, I've done that series BMW to where I did 2 amps underneath the subwoofer enclosure, to where there's a magnetic panel that you could remove. That was the front of the subwoofer enclosure, to where you can service the amplifiers if there was an issue. But you could put the amp panel back on to hide everything, and it looked built in, and the subs were firing up. And then the back seat ski hole was down. Obviously, air could then move in that direction.
So roughly how much does this cost?
So that one that I did
I have
probably
it sketched.
around 30 to 40K.
So
yeah, I have it sketched, Matt, with a aerospace 12-channel DSP, the Class A 430 Mosconi running the 3.5 and tweeter in the pillars, and then a 5-channel for the left and a 5-channel for the right running the mid bass, left rear fill, and mid bass, right rear fill.
All active, of course, done through DSP, through the Mosconi DSP.
Yep. Sub channel, 1 on each woofer. 3 amps, one processor, I think that's the most efficient way to get you all the power.
So you're 30 or 40,000. Let's say I hired you today. I shipped the car. When and how long? You know, how when?
Here's the hard
Quarter
part.
4 of 2023. I mean, minimum. It wouldn't be be anytime soon.
Got it.
I would love to get you in tomorrow, but I can't.
Yeah. We're just throwing hypotheticals out here, you know, and then you would know, don't frickin' touch my paint.
Yep.
Don't scratch the outside. Don't wipe it down. Don't
Yep.
frickin' mess it up.
Yeah. Seriously, I would love for you to sit in a car that is done correct, because I know that you would appreciate the end result.
Sure.
Because
sure.
A lot of the analogies that I make all the time is like the modern audio client is, picture the 1998 human that has a DLP TV that just bought it, right? The enthusiast, the obsessed person that just bought a $6,000 DLP TV, right? Picture that person. That's you. You have that TV in your house. Now picture you being locked in your house until now. You haven't left your house since 1998 when you bought that DLP TV. And now picture leaving your house and going to your local movie theater and watching 8K laser projection.
Right. Yeah.
Your head would explode, right? Based on the difference. When you left your house, you thought that was the best of the best. But when you leave and experience something different, you realize that you didn't actually know anything. Much like you've alluded to multiple times in this podcast, right?
I told this, Matt, I told this story to Gary Biggs at MasterTech. About 15 years ago, my wife and I were at my parents' house and came across my old Atari 2600. And you know what? This was 20 years ago, not 15, 20 years ago. And we took it home and we plugged it into our DLP or our was it a DLP? I don't know, whatever it was, our big deep TV.
Yeah.
And,
projection, Mitsubishi probably.
Yeah. Rear projection.
Yeah.
And tried to play Atari for about 4 minutes until we were like, how did we ever look at this? How did this ever seem like something you would be entertained by? And that was 20 years ago. And we were already like so far past. So cars today and the tuning capabilities, we've gone from carburation to fuel injection with the ability to dial things in and make them run super efficient. And I guarantee you a engine tuner today could make a car run way cleaner with no catalytic converters and no, PCV systems and none of that stuff in place. They could still get the car to run way cleaner than anybody ever could with a carburetor. So
I get what you're throwing out.
It's a game changer, and it is different and in my mind better than it's ever been.
And there's nothing that I enjoy better than taking somebody like you that puts their hopes and wishes of wanting better onto somebody like myself and me doing the project, and then you listening to the car and being like, holy shit, there is something better. Right? Because again, I know what you're thinking. I know the type of person you are based on talking to you and understanding your background and listening to you talking to other people at other times. There is always that sense of like, nobody can really do it better than I've experienced. And once you experience that, you're truly humbled and like, holy shit, there's a whole other side to this that I had no idea about.
The other side too is that as much as what we just threw down on paper is a $30,000 to $40,000 system, is that there are significant steps between that stock system that's in there now and that we'll just call it a $40,000 system. It's really easy to tailor that back. And like we were talking about, that jump point becomes when you are not going to use the factory locations, and the point where you're wanting to go with the what's a set of Utopia tweeters these days, Matt? Is it?
It's like $2,000 just for the tweeters.
$2,000 just for the tweeters, right? And to put that in perspective, you can get a set of Morel Carbon Elate Pros which are great speakers, and a whole 3-way set is $2,700, right? And we're committing $2,000 just to tweeters, and the difference between them, yes, if both were in front of anybody and they were both free, most people are going to gravitate to the utopias. But there's a lot of choices. That's what makes our job almost as hard as a detailer's job. How many polishes and waxes and compounds, and how many steps does it take to get a car paint corrected and put the final shine on it? And there are guys that can do that in a 3-step process, and there's guys that will take a 20-step process to get there.
100%.
And we're kind of in that same boat that again, you want the right golfer coming up and taking that swing for you, right? Yep. No matter what clubs he's going to use, no matter what ball he puts on the tee.
Yeah, I think I get, I've heard, now older, I've heard some great systems, and so I think I know where you're going with, like, and I've seen your stuff, and part of the reason why I even decided to do this podcast is because I know I have a frame of reference for what I'm looking at, and I think those are the customers you're looking for. Like, I haven't listened to it. I don't know exactly what it's going to sound like. It's certainly likely to blow me away, but I kind of have a reference for, how do you convince somebody to spend $40,000 on a system? Well, I could do it for 10. I could do it for 5.
And at the same
for 18.
And at the same thing, most of it is sight unseen, right? So like the Scottsdale, Arizona guy that I have shipped me his next 2 cars, Lamborghini Urus, Tesla Plaid, sight unseen, never stepped foot in the facility, but he's going off of YouTube videos, people's testimonials on our website. He's seeing the people's testimonials of the YouTube videos that he's seen on YouTube. So not only he's seen the YouTube video, but he's also seeing the words of the people who got the jobs done. And a lot of these people have $500,000 in home audio, and they're like, this is better than my home audio system. The shitty thing about my position, I have to exceed this guy's expectations. So that's what I deal with on a daily basis, is always from a fabrication standpoint, from a sound quality standpoint, how do I exceed this person's expectations, right? You sent a car to me. How do I exceed Matt Moreman's expectations in audio? At the end of the day, I know that you, this other client with the Urus and the Plaid, has probably never heard anything remotely close to what he's going to experience. So I can keep talking myself up for 4 hours to you on the podcast, but at the end of the day, that's not going to even exceed what you're going to get when you listen to the car. Because most people are referencing a DLP TV, when in reality, 8K laser projection is the standard of today.
So why are you accepting the fact that you can't do a car for like 7 or 8 months? Why don't we figure out a way to get you so you could do it now?
Because it's bandwidth. It takes me a long time to do.
I get that, but how do we add bandwidth?
And that's why I need to talk to you for a fucking self-coach to accentuate my bandwidth.
Yes.
That is what I need. I need to figure out how to scale and how to exceed my bandwidth. And that's what I struggle with. And that's what I know that you've excelled with.
Hey, it's expensive to ship to California, but we're only about 12 weeks out. So
12 weeks, that's still unacceptable. You want your garage designed? We'll have it done like in a couple of days. Yeah. Let's do it.
Oh, we already designed your system, though. We're good.
Yeah.
But you're saying you actually complete the garage in a reasonable amount of time.
Well, I don't install it. I don't do that. I don't do that part.
And that's what I need to learn from you, because you were me a long time ago, but I'm still stuck as me. And I need to understand how to get to where you're at.
Well, part of it would involve you installing systems for yourself to show what can be done. And see, the problem with car stereo is that it can't be DIY, right? So you can't scale that part of it. it would have to be involve some version of you training other installers how to get some percentage of what you're able to create, some
The
smaller
funny thing
percentage.
is too, like we actually bought a Tesla Model 3 as our shop car, and I got a bunch of manufacturers to donate product to the build, because most of the YouTube videos that I do, I show pretty much the end result and build pictures along the way to show how I got there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did like a 12-part series on YouTube that I haven't posted yet because the car's not done, but it's a Tesla Model 3, and I showed how to do the radar, how to do the design, how to do the audio, how to do the sound treatment, how to do, the disassembly, everything, like all the most mundane stuff that would get a lot of views because people would be interested in, because it's the stuff that I never show on any build. But the problem is I got 75% of the way in, but now I have all these super high paying jobs that pay the bills that I just can't put to the side, because at the end of the day I have to pay the bills.
Here's an example of where I think you can really make some life improvements of when the business coach says, okay, we've got to put on the calendar 2-3 hour meetings, in this month. And then you should really join the group of other business owners. It's another, 2 hour meeting on a Wednesday morning. And what most of the unsuccessful, scaling, that are unsuccessful at growing or scaling their business do is they always have something where they can't make, 2 of those 3 meetings, where they don't do it. So they don't make the commitment to it. And so, or another big mistake can be you hire somebody to help you, but you don't make the commitment to the hire, right? You don't commit to training them to doing what needs to be done. And so this is where the tricky part comes in, and where I was so lucky because I was broken and I was committed to whatever, just like do whatever. So I got lucky in that aspect. When I hired a coach, I was a broken human, so I needed to be fixed. But if you can figure out a way to, like I see this. So the Wednesday morning group is a classic example. I have the most successful business out of anybody in the group, and I'm always there early. I'm always not always paying attention. I'm not distracted. I'm not picking up the phone. And yet the least successful person is always the one who's driving in their car, right, while the meeting's already going. The least successful person misses every third meeting because they've got something so important to do, some appointment they couldn't get out of. The least successful person is the one that, has to turn their screen off every 10 minutes because they're picking up the phone. And so that commitment to the coaching and commitment to, I guess, evolution or evolving is the key component, I think, to saying, in this case, you have the bandwidth to now, because of how good you guys are, you probably will always have some sort of lead time because of the labor intensity of it. But I would think you would always want to be trying to create bandwidth. I mean, Singer just had an investor come in and they bought $1 million, or I think it's 100,000 square foot facility. And so they have now Singer went from building one car at a time, it would take them 3 years to do it, to now they have 100,000 square foot facility where they have, 200 projects going on all at once with hopefully better quality. And I don't remember who the original Singer guy was who's building the cars, but you get the point that they're likely building better quality because they brought in some CAD people who were better than the original guy at drawing. They brought in some upholstery people, and then eventually they become this place that's just so great to work that all talent wants to come there. And so if you're the key talent, then you can leverage that as long as you're willing to commit to showing up to some goofy Wednesday. I'm using that example of the Wednesday meeting.
It's a good example.
That you show up with it. You're not late. You're not driving your car. You're not too important for your own personal growth. And then next thing you know, it's not 7 months, it's 6 months. It's not 6 months, it's 5 months. It's not 5 months. And then make some great video and it jumps back up to 8 months, and then you respond by trying to hire some other people to get back to 6 months, and then eventually it ends up being at 18 weeks, and then it's 9 weeks, and then you can take on new customers regularly. Now, if you're really successful, you'll always have a lead time, but if you start to take some focus, then you go from doing 4 million or 5 million or 10 million or 20 million to 30. You go to doing more. The question, of course, you also have to ask is how much is enough? How much there probably is a point where your quality can only reach some critical mass number, right? Where maybe there's not enough talented people in the world to do what it is you do, but in most cases, that's a lie that we tell ourselves. Right. I don't know if your normal podcast is an hour long. We've probably gone way over.
I think we're on hour 3, but it's good. This is interesting, and it's definitely a stretch for us out of the norm. No, it's really cool. We actually did a whole little series in our first season about trying to design super budget systems to help not just our mix, our audiences, installers. It's old school car audio guys that are getting back into it. It's people that are investing in their own systems, whether they're DIYers or using shops to do the work. And so we did this whole series on back then a couple of years ago, it was the $3,500 system mentality of, I think it might've been Car Stereo Review back in the day, used to have that section where they'd have shops send in a system design for a certain car, and they'd run them in, and you'd see what the different shops did for the same thing. It was kind of that mentality to kind of see what people came up with. So this is going to be a really cool thing that we'll tout your E92 system design.
That was the biggest change in my business. Was I wanted only what I want, and I wanted to sell only what I want. And then I bought every cheap pressure washer that exists, and I came to the conclusion that, well, when I was 21, I wasn't buying this pressure washer, or maybe 18, because by the time I was 21, I was balling out of control. Selling car stereos, spent every penny of that. But I've realized that there's a progression in life, right? And we should enjoy that progression. If you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you get a 488 Pista as your first car, you're going to be jaded. You're never going to really appreciate the struggle, the ascent. And so the biggest thing in my business, the biggest decision was, I decided to sell a Karcher pressure washer with more base fittings and base gun. Not what I'm using today, but the thesis was, what would young Matt Moreman have wanted? What would I have accepted back? Because in the beginning, I thought, well, I'm just going to wait till I can do the Krenzla pressure washer. I'm going to wait till I can buy the $40,000 Utopia Mosconi system. But that's just not realistic. What is the progression? What is a system that would be acceptable to you at different, where you're not sacrificing quality at that level, right? What would I do if I had $3,500 to spend on a system? That's the question. Right. And as long as you don't bombard them with 75 different choices, here's the we call it basic, advanced, ultimate. And that adds an element of the ability to then hire some people to do those systems, right? And you're putting your stamp, you're putting your check, before it leaves the door. Make sure maybe you're doing superior tuning on inferior products or whatever it ends up being, that where people get a result where they're blown away. I had that with this goofy little $100 pressure washer. I can't believe this pressure washer could do this good of a job at foaming the car and could actually produce this much of a result at $150. Well, the only reason it could do that is because we tuned it properly, set it up properly, put the right fittings and accessories on it. So same thing with the system. Yeah,
you're adding a ton of value to something, and as long as the core product is reasonably built and sustainable over time, then you've got a good deal.
But these are all things when we've kind of been jumping around between detailed systems and business and life and sport. It's been, I think, a fun experience talking about it. But this concept of you have. I just keep looking at Matt. I'm like, just see this talent and like, how do I get my car done, not in 12 months, but in now, how can we convert them to be never have that comment of I don't have enough time. How do you convert it to, man, I can do whatever I want. I can go wherever I want, do whenever I want, and not be tied to the talent. The talent is a boat anchor around your neck, just hanging off of your neck because you have the talent, you have all this knowledge, and the difficulty is to include others in that. Because I tell you what, some of my worst days have been, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, I don't have anything to do. Like, I don't have a job. Like, there's nothing for me to, like, I'm worthless. I have nothing. Like, everybody can do all of this talent I thought I had. Everybody else is doing it. I don't even need to be here. Like, I've had days like that where I'm like, I'm not here.
Band still needs a conductor,
Yeah. Well, right, exactly. And the conductor has the most, conductor is the highest paid in the orchestra. The conductor is the person that makes the whole thing happen. The conductor is who has the sheet, the music in front. No one can play anything without them all together. If the violin's just going in the background, it doesn't, the orchestra, the piece doesn't happen.
Right.
But there's such an investment in all the behind the scenes that's required for you to show up at that Wednesday meeting on time. You're in it. You're investing in yourself. And so that's I think that was the key message. that was the big epiphany, that looking back at how Obsessed Garage has happened is things like that. And so I've gone through coaching. My coach has gone through coaching with like 50 other people, and I don't think a single one of them has done what I've done, just not because I'm great, but because I listened. Listened, executed, fought a little, then eventually said, you know what, I've listened 10 times and it worked. Maybe I should just listen and stop fighting. And then, but generally that once every 12 months, I'll fight them on something. And then I'm like, you know what? Well, the other 37 times I listened, he was correct. So maybe I should listen again. It's been life-changing for me too. Like tomorrow, like I don't normally stay up this late. I just won't do anything. I'll do whatever I want.
So with your podcast, with the YouTube page, with the Facebook group, with everything else you got going on, what would you say is the most useful sense of your time? Right? Because everyone has bandwidth, right? Everyone has to prioritize how they use their bandwidth.
Right. Prioritization, right. The most important thing that I can do is to organize a proverbial drawer. So I've gotten ahead of myself the last few years in that I was worried about if I found a product that I liked and I knew others would like it and I want to talk about it, I would go right to that. Instead of buying the product, putting it in the drawer. I share the process of me buying the product. I share the process of me breaking it or doing it wrong and putting it in my proverbial drawer. I share the process of me then figuring out, okay, maybe I bought kind of the wrong color or wrong thing. Let me shift some things around. I share the process of all of that without fear that somebody's going to steal my idea. So the most important thing that I can do is organize this drawer in my desk and share that process. And at the end of the day, I probably have some product that I can then sell that can then change some part of the marketplace. That's what I did in the very beginning. And then I've been very focused on creating an end-to-end solution for the garage so that I could do every part and piece and design a garage from start to finish. Now that I have that, and now that I've turned all the activities of like building the website and all these things we've been talking about, gotten that off my plate, my most important thing is to organize a drawer and share it with the audience, because that's what I like doing the most.
So perhaps patience, which is the hardest thing to uphold when you're passionate.
Right. It's hard to slow down, so I'm slowing down to speed up.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really, really freaking hard for me to do.
Yeah.
I'm very impulsive. And so I like to do things like right now. I like to do things I always like to do things 18 months too soon.
So Matt, can you run through the list of what's in the garage one more time?
So I have
We know the E92.
well, right now I have a 2013 E92 M3. I have which is a really special car. I bought it from EAG. It had 800 miles on it. I paid $120,000 for it, for a $50,000 car, because it was such a one of a kind thing. So it's no navigation, manual, competition package. It was like the 60th last built 2013. So it's a really special car. I have an E36 M3, so a Technoviolet E36, but that'll be a giveaway car in the fall. I have a 2011 997.2 GT3 RS. That's a giveaway car in June. I have the 992 Touring, so the 2022 Brewster Green Touring, GT3 Touring. I have the Raptor, the Gen 2 Raptor, which is Michelle's. So she drives that. It's the best family vehicle ever. Ford F-150 is the crew cab is the best family vehicle ever. And I have a Rivian R1T coming. And then for the Helen House, I have a Cayman GTS 4.0 that'll be a car up there that has Burmester, which I think is pretty decent for a factory stereo. It's good enough for a rental car. But really, I have the E92 and the 992 Touring. Those are like the two cars. All the others will come and go. So the E92 will be staying with me theoretically for a really long time. I don't care about resale value, so I'm not worried about I just don't want to tear it apart because it is so nice and clean. I've learned my lesson about tearing cars apart and they never go back together quite the same. But that's what the E92 would be something that I would really love to have a great stereo in. Same thing with I love having a stereo in a GT3 because there's such crappy factory stereos. It's such a great car for driving around.
It is.
Everybody talks about track car. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's the best street car ever.
Dude,
it's amazing.
I'll tell you right now, the GT3 that I did, that you probably saw at some point on Obsessed Garage where we did the carbon fiber resin infused enclosure. That car, you could legitimately drive down the street playing the audio system, and you have no idea that this car has any kind of engine on the planet, right? Like you can't even hear the engine if you wanted to. But at the same point, if you wanted to, you could then turn down the audio system and have the full experience of a GT3. Mm-hmm. And what always tilts me, and I don't know how you decipher through all the comments of YouTube and all the filth and trash that is the comments. But like for some people, they would just comment like, the amount of weight that you've added to this GT3 RS is just incomprehensible, right? And in my head, I'm just like, all right, so you're taking a lightweight Asian male and converting him to like an American male, right? That's really the difference, which is the audio system, but nobody even thinks about it and puts it in that perspective. The car is still getting down. It's still fast as hell. It's not like it's not fast. But at the same point, the GT3
is such a weird car because people believe that it should only be driven on the track, but those are only like people who don't have one and are never going to get one.
The GT3, especially the RS, like they've stripped every ounce of weight from that car, and that's what makes it so loud. But at the same time, there might be an enthusiast who wants that car, but at the same time wants it to sound good. It's still going to be fast. It's not going to be slow. It's not going to be slower than a traditional 911. But at the same time, it's going to sound like a studio, and it's still going to be fast. Like there's...
You get the best of both worlds. Right. You turn the stereo off and let it rip, or you can turn it on and mask all the vibrating and all the nonsense that's going on.
Right. And I would get it. I would get it too if you added an audio system and it looked like crap and it just didn't do any respect to the Porsche name, right? Because we've seen that all the time. But if you see something that you've taken the time to resin infuse the carbon fiber in the subwoofer enclosure to make it as lightweight as possible, like at some point you just have to respect that. right?
Some will, some won't.
The car that I really want you to do for me is I want a 2016 RS, and I want to put a crazy stereo in that. I want that to be my mountain car, where I could just go rip the mountain roads, and then occasionally when you're in between roads and you have this amazing audio experience that you can turn on. I mean, that's the car that I really want to do is a 991 RS. And just do a great stereo so I can, like I say, in between the roads. You turn it off when you're on Richard B. Russell or the Cherry Hollow Skyway, and you turn it when you're in between those roads and you're driving down the Smoky Mountain Parkway or whatever. You turn the stereo on and just put the windows up, and
it just gives you like cruising USA vibes, like the old Nintendo 64 game. Like if you want to drive it, you can drive it, but if you just want to enjoy it for the tunes, like the sheer volume of road noise and engine noise doesn't even factor in. Like it doesn't even create a dent in the audio.
Yeah, but people in general just, they're not, they don't understand, like even things that I'm not, if you don't have a lot of passion in life, then you can't recognize it, right? You can't recognize great. If you're regular, then great just passes by you all the time and you can't see it. And so, I like to think that I'm not into watches, but I know what a great watch is just by seeing it. I'm not into guns, but I know what a great gun is when I see it. Or if somebody even just takes 2 minutes to explain it, you're explaining to me an audible experience that I probably haven't experienced in a car ever before. I've experienced some pretty gnarly 2-channel setups in the house. So like where, entire buildings were built inside a building. So that might still win the argument, but
it won't.
I know what you're saying. Like,
I promise you, listen, I've sat in Focal. I've been to France, listened to the Focal Grand Utopias in their listening room. And I will say 10 times out of 10 that the best car audio system will obliterate that experience. Obliterate.
Right. Well,
because it comes down to the amount of dynamic range that you can achieve in a car versus a physical room, right? To do the same thing in a room that big, you would need millions of dollars of audio equipment done correctly to achieve the same experience that you can get in a small confines of a car the same way.
Yeah. Doing 140 dB while sounding good in a large room is not an easy task.
Really, very uncommon, very unrealistic.
And like I said, keep in mind there are people that spend $80K on an audio system that when I deliver the car, right? Like picture you spending $80K, then sitting in the car, you have an absurd expectation to what you're about to experience, right? Spending $80K, you're expecting something unbelievable. And to exceed that expectation with each one of those clients is like a huge feat to have to overcome. But the thing there is most people, even the people that have $500,000 in home 2-channel audio, haven't experienced audio the same way based on the dynamic range.
So on that note, how do we get you to do more of them?
And apparently I got to fly down to Orlando to figure that out.
No, you don't have to do that. We'll just connect you with Rick and he'll start working on you forever.
So I do an audio system for you, and the first 2 or 3 tracks that you're playing, what are they?
I've been really into Chris Stapleton lately.
Okay.
Just so weird because I'm not a hate country, right? But I've been kind of getting into like real man country, where it's not like that stupid twangy and it's not like the razzle nonsense country stuff. But I'm a huge Perfect Circle guy, so I would probably put on When the Levee Breaks on the I think it's the Norms album. So something of Perfect Circle, something from Chris Stapleton.
And Gary's writing this down, right?
And then you'd probably just go with regular old, Pink Floyd something or other, just like Pink Floyd The Wall or something like that. I have to look at my.
Yeah, we have a Spotify playlist for all the things that each guest would then play on their system.
I'll give you the songs then. Let me pull up. I'm a big Tidal fan. I like Tidal.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris Stapleton, Cold, Another Brick in the Wall, and Perfect Circle, By and Down the River. Those would be my three favorite, three songs.
Got it.
But then I also love female vocalists. So I'm a big Sarah Bareilles fan. So I'd probably pull some of that out too.
Yeah, Chris Stapleton has an NPR Tiny Desk. So next time you're in your BMW, throw your phone on the center of your dashboard, connect to Bluetooth on your factory radio, and if what you're seeing isn't exactly representation on what you're feeling of where the audio is coming from on your dash, it's trash.
Yeah.
I got another one for you, Matt. I just watched last night on Tiny Desk was Master Ace. You were saying you were old school rap guy. Master Ace does some it blew me away. It was a big surprise as I was just kind of letting him play last night.
I don't even know what you're talking about. NPR Tiny Desk. It's a YouTube channel, or
you got to do it. So NPR Tiny Desk, they actually have a lot of sound engineers that record the audio extracted by artists recording in real time in a library or wherever they're recording.
I believe it's in the NPR, in the office area at NPR.
So
so it's literally
for instance, Matt,
bookshelves set up.
So they'll have mics set up throughout the whole array, right? So if you see the lead singer in the center, that's where exactly you're hearing that person sing. If there's a guy on a saxophone, left center, that's exactly where you should hear them in your car,
right,
or in your home. If there's an electric guitar far right, that's exactly where you should hear that guitar.
Is it 192.24 or something? Is it high res audio, or
it's not necessarily high res, but at the same time, it's recorded. I'll always say better than half the fucking artists record on their album. You'll search Leon Bridges, and his stuff sounds so amazing, and then you download the album, and it sounds nothing like the NPR Tiny Desk. They do such a better job.
Never even heard it.
Yeah, Adele's Tiny Desk sounds better than her albums.
Oh wow!
Their recording guys in a big room did a better job.
I can't tell you how many times that I take a client, I set them in the car. We start off with the Astel and Kern, the $3,700 audio player. We play a bunch of songs, and they're amazed. But there's something to be said for seeing how it's recorded, because you're seeing the phone in the center of your dashboard, say it's Usher, and you hear the subwoofer sound unlike any time you've ever heard a subwoofer, period. Right? So the extension of the subwoofer sounds exactly like this dude playing the drums or the bass guitar. You can't even comprehend the difference.
And I think that part of that is also combining the video with it and having this,
visual
it just makes more
sense
having the visual representation than just shutting your eyes in a car and
right.
listening to
And you hear the
stage.
backup singers to the far, you're watching it and you understand the backup singers are to the far right. So that's helping you critically listen. So you're sitting there and you're almost trying to prove it wrong. And you're like, all right, let's try and hear the backup singers to the left. And you can't do it. They're perfectly to the back right. You're giving the proof of concept to understand that the stage presence and the tuning of this car is perfect.
I'll check it out.
And like I said, when you check it out, you put it in your car and you hear the backup singers coming on the left and the right, then you're like, wow, there's so much more to be achieved here.
NPR Tiny Desk on YouTube.
Yeah. Chris Stapleton he does a set on there. Obviously, there's a great one from Sting and Shaggy. There's a great one from Leon Bridges. There's a great one from Usher, Alicia Keys, Anderson .Paak. And like I said, when you're listening to all this stuff, you see exactly where it's being recorded and where the mics are set up. So if it's not right in your car, you know your car is wrong. Or your home is wrong.
Yeah.
And even when we were at Expo, the first thing that I did when I sat in the cars, because people at least have a little bit of respect for me, they were like, play whatever you want to play. So I put on NPR Tiny Desk because it doesn't lie. So I throw it on the dash, and even the people listening to what that was, never experiencing it, were like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, this sounds better than everything that I'm playing for everyone sitting in the car.
That's cool.
It is special.
Check it out.
It is cool.
You ever done a 3.5 hour podcast?
A few times, yeah. And the funny thing is, Matt, like, I would say the longer podcasts that we do get almost 100% retention on the entire podcast. So the longest podcast that we've done, people have listened to in a higher percentage than the shorter podcast.
It's probably because, like, if we stayed in it, like if you stayed in it with somebody, you were interested enough to keep it going. Yeah. I don't think I've done a lot of live streams. Like I've done like full day live streams, a couple of those.
Oh gosh.
Just run it all day, like polishing all day kind of thing. But I think this is probably the longest podcast I've ever done.
Yeah. Like I said, we've always done organic. When it ends, it ends. When it is what it is.
Yeah. I must be dehydrated because I haven't had to go to the bathroom at all. So I'm done all right.
I've had to go twice.
Me either.
Well, you were smart and brought some water. I didn't even bring any. I'm like, well, that's good because I won't have to go to the bathroom.
No, but like I said, I knew going into this that it was going to be good because, one, you have a great business sense, right? So no matter what, even if a majority of what you have to do and relate to isn't necessarily car audio, it has to do a lot with the key demographic of people listening. So whether it's the enthusiasts that love nice shit, you can relate to that. And there's a whole side of the industry that they're not tied into if they don't know who you are or what you do, right? And then on the same part of that is there's a demographic of installers or people in our industry that also don't know what you do, but also have ties into our industry, right? Because you kind of started out in the same point of everyone else, but you just kind of diverted into a different aspect. But you've also pivoted and compounded your knowledge into accelerating to the next level. And
well, in many ways, I envy all of you that stayed the course. You stayed the path. You developed the body, and you've all, many people listening have developed their niche of expertise of whatever that is. And I feel like a trader. I feel like I left the happy to chase the money. And I probably would have had more money had I stayed in the happy, if you will.
I promise you wouldn't. So I'm glad you did what you did.
That's true. Maybe. I guess depending on how it all worked out. But I would, my one ask to you guys is that you take this podcast and like make a really great post and put it in the Facebook group, because I think it'll help, add some context to part of my love for car audio and the whole thing. And then it'll also get a lot of people excited about, seeing some of these systems you're talking about. And
like I said, I have a lot of respect for your page because, again, I know the people that are in it. Yeah, I've obviously gotten a lot of clients from it, but at the same point, like, there is a lot to be learned by a lot of things that are posted. And in today's climate of Facebook, there's so many things that people just won't allow you to post, right? But at the same time, like, if you're posting it to that group, there might be a lot to learn from that post. And some people are just like taking it down because like it's either self-promotion or whatever. But at the end of the day, anything that I've ever posted in like Obsessed Garage, there's not like links to buy stuff and all this kind of shit. It's just to show what's capable of modern day audio in a nice car done correctly. Like, that's how I've always posted.
my guess is you're not skimping on those posts. And just like we were talking about those inquiries and how you can tell how much passion somebody has and how much they're actually interested in having you do work for them shows through in their emails and their correspondence. And I'm sure your posts are the same way, Matt. You definitely know how to showcase your work very well.
It shows that the person posting cares about what is coming across to the audience.
You get people that are just cutting and pasting and trying to promote themselves. Let me just promote it everywhere. I hate that stuff. Yeah. I had one guy tell me he was a detailer and he also selling some product. He sells some products, and he told me. I said, look, I love it that you guys post. I don't even care if you're competing with me, but I want you to contribute. So make contribution posts where you're talking about a product, and you don't even need to post a link. They'll just look you up. They'll click on your name. They'll look at, they'll find they'll find you. And those are the customers you want anyway. Mm-hmm. You don't want the layups. You don't want the easy. And he said, well, I don't have time to do that. And you should, he was basically telling me that, well, your group wasn't started in that sense. So I should be allowed to promote this because what I have is better than what you're selling. And so, he was basically telling me that it's supposed to be like this democracy. I told him this isn't a freaking democracy. It's a dictatorship. It's my dictatorship. And you can promote all day long as you provide value to the people. Right, and then people will be smart. You don't have to post links. You don't have to post prices. You don't have to post all that kind of, simple, lazy stuff. You just need, like, people will post their YouTube video. Like, no. If you wrote 3 paragraphs, I'll leave your YouTube video up there all day because you're contributing. You're saying, hey, I think this might be of value to people. And then, the moderators, it's taken me some time to, teach people what to leave and what not to leave. But, you go in there and you put a little bit of effort in and you post, who you are and what you're about by putting that little bit of effort in. You don't have to link anything. It just happens. Yeah. That's always been my argument. But he's like, I don't have time to do that work. I'm too busy working. I said, well, I had time to build it. I have time to moderate it. I have time to grow this audience. I have time to make all these videos. And then you don't have time to come in and leverage all of that. So get out of here. You're not allowed here. So there are people like that's why they get deleted, because they don't want to put in any effort. They just want to take the takers of the world or something I don't have any time for. So the group has been good because of that in general.
So for the people listening, join Obsessed Garage Facebook group. Join Dialed In Podcast, right?
Yeah, I usually do it every Friday. As long as I'm in town, I do it every Friday, and choose like an hour and a half of just people asking me. It's a very detailing heavy, but it's also I'm ranting on whatever. Like what was the last rant I was doing about? People get me going all the time. But you ever watch HGTV? That it's the show House Hunters. Mm-hmm. My argument was that you should have like good-looking people looking at fancy houses, not fatzos looking at $120,000 dumps. And then you would get, that's what people want to see. They want to see something nice, not junk. I was freaking out about that. This is why I only have 300,000 subscribers, because I'm a little bit polarizing, for gosh sakes.
And then Obsessed Garage on YouTube. Is there any other channels?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. If you just Google Obsessed Garage, you'll find me everywhere. So you have Instagram.
Do you do
Facebook,
anything on TikTok?
No.
I feel like that's a blind spot. I feel like that's a little bit of a blind spot. I found that TikTok is just so engaging when it comes to being able to edit content, right? So if you're shooting something from your phone, you can edit 5 videos into a final product and just put it out on TikTok. That's 3-4 minutes, and you get a lot of engagement.
I struggle with TikTok because it's shaky ground. First of all, the data is unreliable. That's nonsense. There's no way that there aren't 150 million users in the U.S. using TikTok. It's nonsense. 50% of the United States is not using TikTok. 50% of the people I know aren't using TikTok. So their numbers are nonsense.
Okay.
So when you say you get 1 million views, you probably got like 100,000. So it's about 10 to 1. They know that Americans love numbers. They know that Americans love followers. And so they're creating and they're adding, bot related spikes of views. That's very clear. But the issue of TikTok, you build your house on that land is real shaky. There's a high probability that TikTok doesn't exist. Likely not, but there's still a good percentage, 10, 15, 20%, that TikTok gets, shut down. So I just not wasting any time. I don't like TikTok, and I don't like to be on platforms that I don't like to frequent, because then it becomes a job to me. And so I love Instagram. I like Facebook a lot. I love YouTube. And so if I'm going to put some effort into something, I don't like Twitter, so Twitter is not interesting. I'm not on Twitter personally very often. So to utilize Twitter or TikTok or platforms that I'm not interested in would be like contrived, and it would be a job for me. So if it sounds like TikTok works for you and you like using it, then it's probably a good platform. But
Well,
I've avoided it.
TikTok works for me when I post like laser radar integration videos, and everyone argues in the comments. Therefore, it helps the algorithm. And then all of a sudden I get like, 200 inquiries in my Instagram because it's linked to TikTok. And people then comment and ask questions of like, hey, what's the system in this car? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I do think
how much for a Valentine 1 installed?
I hope I don't regret my lack of desire for lack of use of TikTok, but
there is shaky grounds with TikToks. Obviously, they're right now in the Supreme Court
right now
arguing.
Right now they're right in front of Congress, with some shill who's clearly he's an actor. He's really not.
He's not answering any questions.
The whole thing is
asking.
just shady.
100%. Yeah, TikTok might not exist tomorrow. So,
yeah, but just because of the sheer amount of people using it, it's unlikely that they'll shut it down. But there is a possibility that can happen, especially if they do get like proof that it's freaking Chinese spyware. But
from a creator standpoint, I think what I enjoy about it is that I can take 10 cuts of video as a video editor from my phone and then edit that into a finished video versus taking 10 cuts of video from my Sony 4K cam and editing that in Final Cut Pro to create a video.
Yeah, a lot more work. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. I knew I would, and get to talk about audio and talk about myself. It's always fun to talk about myself, So I've got pretty good at telling the story because I've done a lot of these things where, and every time I tell it, I learn something about myself. That's what I found is that when you tell your story, it's quite therapeutic, and you sort of figure things out about why things happen and how things happen. And doing a podcast, dedicated toward car audio has made me really, think about things a little differently. And I found that I was always so afraid to tell my story because it comes across as self-serving or narcissistic. And I found that when I stopped caring about that and really just sharing my story, sharing my testimony, it's really helpful to me, psychologically. It's helped me overcome some of my hangups, and it's really opened up the world. And so I would encourage everybody to, don't be afraid of looking like a jerk, looking like a narcissist, when sometimes just getting out of your own head and sharing your story can really ingratiate you to two new people that I didn't know personally that now, I'm sure we have a lot in common that maybe we didn't know we had. So, and we wouldn't know that if we weren't sharing stories and sharing testimonies. So,
but I will say that you probably have the ultimate success story of anyone that started out in car audio or audio period to be able to scale that into what you've been able to achieve with Obsessed Garage. Because again, there's so many people that are listening that know your product, but also don't know your product, but at the same time understand how much of what you do is an essential part of what their life is. that they didn't know they had before until now they're going to dive into now after this podcast, Obsessed Garage, Matt Moreman, and then seeing stuff that you have to offer and then understanding that it resonates so much with them.
Yeah, we got to get some garages. We got to get rid of new age cabinets and got to get rid of crappy lighting and that kind of stuff. Get the doors dialed in and organized, and make sure your paint isn't all scratched up.
Yeah.
We can help you do that. Stop going to car shows and wiping your car down with a single microfiber towel. We'll teach you how to do all that stuff.
Yeah. So if you had the Matt Schaeffer, Matt Moreman combination experience, your car would be amazing. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have all of my cars Matt Schaeffered, and then it's taken care of. Wait.
No, it was
Just
a lot of
send them
fun.
right to Delaware.
There you go. Have to schedule early for one of those giveaway cars.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have met you guys. I appreciate the time, and I guess I'll see you soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate. Obviously, this was a long evening for you, and I guess it is tomorrow already out there.
Yeah,
or close.
1
Oh wow.
All right, fellas. We'll be in touch, and maybe we'll get on the schedule. We'll start saving my pennies so I can do a $40,000 stereo.
Yeah,
in my
save
eye.
those pennies.
Awesome. Good night.